A metal is a material that when freshly prepared, polished or fractured shows a lustrous appearance and conducts electricity and heat relatively well.
Guy, I think you might have prepped up on the wrong type of metal. I mean, there's a lot of type of metal, but I think you didn't get the right memo, son.
Oh, Christ. This is Steegcast.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Steegcast. We're on season 3, episode 2, and this is the metal episode. Well, I'm going to be going through the history of metal music from the early 60s, or the late 60s rather, all the way through to modern day. I haven't got a fancy opening for this one, I'll just get into it. But before I do that, how is everybody doing this week?
All good, man.
Week?
Not bad.
Crock-a-crock-a-lating, is it?
Been doing some gardening, but my fucking been aching for like 2 days straight. It's killing me, like.
No wheelbarrow is, son.
No wheelbarrow, actually. Bare fucking hands, but, you know.
Christ.
Oof.
How's that Scarecrow doing, son?
Scarecrow, son, he's doing well, thanks.
What's his name?
Clive?
Clive the Scarecrow.
You want to get yourself a strimmer, son, it'll change your life.
I got a strimmer, but we had to turn the grass over, so we had to like rake it down, rip it up, and fucking de-root all the grass and fucking.
So you put in like pavement down or whatever?
Full slabs, yeah, full slabs.
Yeah.
Big
Full
garden,
slab.
very big garden.
Fire full slab.
And also something to note, GME, what the old cast was about last week, fucking rocketed again. Been back on that ride. It's been a laugh.
Didn't learn your lesson.
That's enough for part 2 right
did
there.
not learn my lesson. What's a bitch though, right? Is I caught it. I was on plus 125 quid. It went down to. I said to Sean, I said if it gets to 80, I'm gonna fucking get out, like, you know. So it got to 80. Clicked the button, but by the time it processed, it only fucking chucked me 40 quid. I was pretty fucking fuming, like. Well, there we go. That's life now. I've been back on it since and lost it, but you know.
Christ.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. I learned my lesson.
What a ride, son. What a ride.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Crazy kids. I'm still in the game, but I'm really low. I'm down to like 9 quid. I'm not doing well.
It's a hard game. Options, they called it. It's a hard game, like.
Tell you what, I just realised I've been holding for fucking weeks, so I'm going to get charged a percentage per day. How cumulative is that? Am I going to have
like
to
one pence a day is all.
Is it?
Yeah,
it's not
it
going to be a
takes it
noticeable
out every night. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Oh, it takes it in advance, does it?
Yeah, if you look in
Right.
your payments, it'll flag in your payments.
Oh, amazing. I thought like when I cash it in, it'd be like, oh yeah, so I'm up 3 quid, but I owe 3 quid for holding it.
Yeah. You'll be alright. You'll be alright.
Banging.
How's everyone else's month been? Couple of weeks.
It's all good,
Yeah.
man.
Been alright. I mean, we're all still in lockdown.
What do you make of
People
Yoris's
can
Yoris's
but,
roadmap for freedom? And you
Bullshit.
you reckon it's bullshit? You think it's going to happen?
It seems to me that one day it's going to be like everyone's still staying apart from each other and wearing masks, and then the next day it's like a Reading festival or something. you can't go from one extreme to the other in the space of like a month or something. That's my
Can't
take
go
on it all.
No, you are right.
Everyone's suddenly
You are
under the
definitely
impression
right.
that like suddenly one day we're going to have like 80,000 people in a festival or however many it is, and but the week before, you know, I can't even go to Cardiff or whatever, or you know, 2 miles down the road or whatever. So
In relation to this
a
cast,
little bit odd that is.
in relation to this cast, we will not be going to see Mayhem at the end of this month. That's definitely not going to happen. Even though they still haven't cancelled the gig.
Rescheduled.
Yeah, I know,
my
it's fucking annoying.
What's the latest on that, Sean? That hasn't actually been rescheduled.
It hasn't been rescheduled, to my knowledge. It might well have been, and I haven't noticed, but
No, we would have seen that, definitely.
I got both Mayhem and Mortis on my social medias, and it hasn't been cancelled. Downloads cancelled, isn't it? Today.
Cancelled, yeah.
Someone said
Cancelled. Yes.
it's too early in June. It's one of the early ones on the festival circuit. It's like download.
Yeah, I know me and Gareth are meant to be going to Slam Dunk. Has that been moved now, Gareth? It has, isn't it? It has. I'm sure it's been moved.
I don't know when till though.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Who are the headliners of that? Anyone of note?
Sum 41, I think. Headline.
Christ,
I don't want to waste my time.
I thought they were written off.
So I thought you wanted a headline, surely.
I thought they were. I'm going for Motion City soundtrack, but I'm not really paying much attention to headliners. To be honest with you.
That's
Anyone who
fair.
goes to a festival for the headline is a poser. I want to get that out before we start. I only go to a huge festival. I pay 300 quid for a festival, and I only go to the third or fourth stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm Mr. Hipster Metal. But
And I will pay £5 for a two-borg.
I'm the best. It's got to be more than that now, truly. I was paying a
Probably is more
£5
than
for fucking Carlsberg Tuborg back in, oh God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is Alkaline Trio still on Slam Dunk? Because at one point they randomly announced Alkaline Trio, although I never expected Alkaline Trio to play it, but at one point they were like, yeah, Alkaline Trio are playing it. Is that even a thing, or was that forgotten about?
No, I think they're still meant to be playing it.
Are they?
I'm pretty sure.
Confirm that for me.
Hang on.
'Cause, that'd be pretty nuts if I think they kind of announced it with no intention of them playing. That's what it seems
Yeah,
like to me.
they have moved it to this September now, guy. Just
September.
confirming that. But
It's a bit more of a safe date, though, no, you know.
so they have actually said that the lineup is now sort of going to be changed. Said it will remain very similar to the postponed lineup, but it's going to be different in some senses. So it's probably going to be a lot more British bands on there and less American bands, one would imagine.
Brexit might have a lot to do with a lot of stuff as well, son, with respect.
Brexit.
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 It might do. I know Brexit has actually fucked over a lot of like roadies jobs.
If you're
Like
roadie, I'll
working-
send you, son.
Working like European festivals and stuff like that, and a lot of them used to. I'm sure Luke knows a lot about that.
Yeah,
You know,
it's terrible. It's
Well,
absolutely
just
terrible,
the-
son. I have no words to even describe my feelings on it, to be honest with you.
As soon as you start touring from a semi-professional or even amateur level, you're now going to need visas to cover it. And, you know, it's an absolute fucking nightmare. Whereas before, you could literally book a tour, get in a van and go.
Yeah.
So
You can't really
a
do that
visa
anymore.
per country as well, per European country. And how many
mean-
countries do they usually tour?
I don't know if the
in that
Schengen
sense.
agreement still kind of counts. So a lot of Western Europe will be open border once you're in Western Europe. I don't know if that still counts. I have no clue.
Like I would imagine, like Belgium and Holland have like the same thing, don't they?
They don't really have a hard border.
No, they don't have a hard border, but like if you
all.
had a visa, it would probably count for the two.
Yeah, that's
one
what I mean.
would
So
think, like,
you'd have
yeah.
like any Schengen country, so it'd be like France, Belgium, Holland, like you said, Netherlands, and Germany, I think. I fucking don't know. Maybe Switzerland, even though it's not EU, it's still in Europe. Or does Switzerland have a hard border? I can't remember. I remember going to Switzerland on a train, and the like guards came on and took my passport and stuff. So maybe it has got a. It's not in the Schengen area, maybe. Anyway, I'm talking out of my ass. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah. On the topic of festivals, it's a good segue into our topic of the cast. Anyway,
It is. This is the first cast I've presented in a while. I tend to do the recap episodes, but I guess the first one I've written, I think since Brexit, maybe. It's been ages. But yeah, so this is the cast's history of metal, and it's written by myself. So I would just like to give a quick disclaimer. I'm an elitist dickhead who spent way too much time in my teenage years and my early 20s listening to metal, and the episode was written by me. So I would like to advise in advance that there will inevitably be bands and maybe even genres that I have missed out entirely, that I have not.
Let us know if there are, let us know.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. If it's not something that I've not adequately touched on, or a band that you think has contributed to the history of metal that I have not mentioned, because this is the Cliff Notes version. Like I say, I don't claim to be a metal scholar or expert or anything like that. This is not academic. This is just me and my hobby and my interests that just happened to have been listening to metal all these years. And this is what I've just put together as a list of the history of metal. That being said as well, some metalheads that are listening if there are any listening, may notice a bias as we go on for the 80s and 90s to cover in, rather than the excesses of that era, the more underground genres that developed in that time. So whilst these genres now are not truly underground anymore, nothing is, the subculture is dead because of the internet. It may anger some of you why I'm talking about random obscure genres rather than not X, Y, or Z great stadium filling band. But please remember that changes, growth and innovation happens on the fringes and then works its way into the mainstream. Which is tried and true for any genre, really. Just ask any pop or electronic artist of the last 10 years that's been overusing the same fucking generic dubstep snare drum in every single fucking track.
True fucking that.
So, let the games commence, I suppose. My first section is called What Is This That Stands Before Me? And those are the opening lyrics to a song called Black Sabbath, a song by a little-known band at the time called Black Sabbath, which is and that song was it was the first track off their first album, which was called Black Sabbath. And is there an opening lyric apt enough for what was about to hit the world? What is this shit indeed? So I'm not one of those people that will wildly go about proclaiming that Black Sabbath invented metal. In fact, this is an argument probably as old as metal itself. Lots of people holding different opinions on who invented metal. So I will give you a quick few examples, and then I'll open the floor to others who may have have other ideas about. Actually, tell you what, I'll do that first. Who do you think invented metal? Where do you think metal came from? That's a good shout.
So I know, I'm not saying he invented metal, but I know he played a part, and that was George Harrison. With his guitar playing. I know, like, Helter Skelter being the main culprit of that, sort of was the prototype, I guess, of a metal riff.
Some consider that the first metal riff, even.
Yeah, I know that's one of them. And then, well, I would agree that Black Sabbath are probably the first metal band.
Oh, crazy. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with Black Sabbath, but I've always had a bias towards... People seem to like, everyone goes nuts for the Beatles. I've always loved the Kinks growing up, right? Ever since I was like fucking 7, like I nicked the CD from the library, it was best of Kinks, and loved it ever since. I had no idea what the song Lola was about until like fucking 15 years later, which was that was a daring topic. Which was a daring topic to sing about at the time, I suppose. But it was the way they did on the amplifiers, wasn't it? I haven't really brushed up on it, but it was something.
You are absolutely correct. Yeah, you are. I'm glad you mentioned that because I've got that written down. Some say it was the Kinks that not started metal, but started. Were they one of the first people to have the practice of cutting, like physically cutting the cones in their amplifiers to achieve distortion on their guitar sound? This was before guitar pedals, so we're talking.
That's cool. 60s. That's
cool. So they are attributed with manufacturing a distorted guitar sound, much like the one used in Helter Skelter and other Beatles tracks, rather than inventing metal, as it were. But without that, if that didn't happen, if that wasn't a practice, if that wasn't a desired guitar sound, would metal have ever come about as a knock-on effect?
That's a bloody good question. It's a butterfly effect.
It is. It's a good question.
It was a catalyst, then, Sean, really.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
And the other one I had was the Beatles, specifically Helter Skelter. Which I knew one of you two would bring up at some point. The other one is what my art and media studies teacher insisted on, and I cannot find any reference to this online, insisted that Blue Oyster Cult invented heavy metal. Now, Blue Oyster Cult didn't start releasing albums until like 72, something like that.
That's what I'm thinking, that was like 70s, sort of.
They were a few years too late, so I don't really... Like, they're in there, surely they're in there as like, the lighter side of metal, but I can't see how they were part of the start of it.
No.
But, so anyway, I have bad news for all of you. None of those answers are right. There's no right answer. Nobody invented metal per se. Again, someone's jumping on my script by saying this. Someone said it just now. No one invented it. It didn't just spring up overnight. It was, like most musical genres and movements, it gestates from other things around it, morphs and forms into its own thing, then gets comfortable and develops its own tropes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The majority of people, as we've kind of agreed, say that Black Sabbath more or less it defined metal in January 1970, or at least laid the template for what metal could build off. But the term metal wasn't coined until many years later. At the time, in 1970, Black Sabbath were just another heavy blues band. Granted, they were heavy, very heavy blues
so.
band. But can you imagine how seismically heavy Tony Iommi's dirging riff sounded in 1970? Like, you buy a fucking record in a record store, you're listening to the fucking Rolling Stones all your life, and then you buy Black Sabbath and chuck it on, and it's just like a 7-minute like doom metal, just like brown.
I bet that was a hell of an experience to live through. Imagine, being around for the, stuff like that coming in. That must have been cool. That must have been cool time, like. Definitely.
And another thing is like, it seems really like overdone now, but I got the gatefold. My dad had like the 3rd pressing, it's not an original, but the gatefold of the Black Sabbath self-titled, and you open the gatefold up, it's a fucking upside down cross. You know what I mean? In 1970, like, that fucked a lot of people off. They had the whole satanic thing going on. Well, Black Sabbath is a satanic ritual or some shit, I think.
Isn't there something about when they were didn't they record their album in some sort of haunted building or something?
They recorded an album, maybe an album or maybe several albums in a castle in Wales, which was supposed to be haunted. That was later on. That wasn't the first album. That was later on. I can't remember which album that is, but it was. I need to know now. I think we're talking like 3rd, 4th, or 5th kind of Aussie era album when they were in their prime. In the mid-70s. I remember I read up everything on Black Sabbath, but I can't remember which album. But yes, you are right. You are absolutely right. Yeah. A lot of people attribute the heavy tone of Tony Iommi's playing, which defined the metal riffing, I suppose. Do you know what happened to Tony Iommi's hands?
Yeah, so it was a bandsaw accident, wasn't it? He cut the top of his finger off. So he had to play with a thimble on his finger to actually press the strings properly. Wasn't it something like that?
You're absolutely right. It wasn't the bandsaw, it was industrial press, which came down and cut the ends of his fingers off.
Oh, fuck.
On the last day of his job in his factory, in a factory in Birmingham.
One more than done, boys.
Yeah, he was like, this is my last day, cut my fucking hand off. And he was like, he was quitting to become a touring musician. I think
if he
in
still
Jeff
had his hands, then would it have kicked off like that?
Well, he cut these like end bits of your fingers.
Yeah.
The bits you touch the threat with were gone, and he was quitting his factory job to be a touring musician. I think with Jethro Tull, and he was fucking just devastated. And like,
I think it was mainly the middle and index finger, wasn't it, or something like that. It wasn't all of them. I think it was just
you can see it now if you look at videos of him playing and stuff. It's more of some fingers than the others that I miss.
Yeah, because I remember reading it. I mean, growing up reading my dad's Total Guitar magazines, you find out all these weird facts about bands and shit like that. And that was one that I always remember. It was a very memorable story, I guess, to remember. Because, like, who plays with a thimble on their finger to play the guitar? And, like, I think over time they made him a special sort of rubber skin-like thimble. So it makes a more natural sound on the guitar. Yeah. So.
Whether it's true or not, although a lot of people do say that that extra like pressure and weight and stuff he was using to like clumsily play the guitar without fingertips, and the fact that he originally was melting plastic bottles onto his fingertips to
so
what the fuck was that?
My fault. Sorry, guys.
Not a problem at all, son. Not a problem at all.
We are live.
We are live. This is Steegcast.
And we are silent.
But
my margin is low if anyone wants to know.
Oh shit, it's one of them. I haven't going. I'm alright. You need to fund your stonks, son. You haven't adequately funded your stonks.
But yeah, Tony Iommi though, I never, as a guitarist, like I never thought he was that good. And I know a lot of people will probably slap me for saying that, but I don't know. I know he sort of was the godfather of metal.
Essentially, that is it, really. I mean, he's just heavy. One of the first
I think
people
we're
to play
talking more
super
sound,
heavy.
though, Rich, don't we? We talk more innovation of sound.
Yeah, I'm not faulting anything like that, but I just mean as from a guitarist point of view, I wouldn't say that he was one of my all-time favorite guitarists. I think he helped like the modern day or like metal go along.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
There's been far better guitarists than him since then. Same with Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton's well overrated. But it's, they kind of helped pave the way for that sound,
It's just how heavy it was for the time. If you
Yeah,
listen to like
totally,
Sweetly
totally.
from 1972, the third album, it's just like, how is that from 72? Electric Funeral off the Paranoid album is just like, what? This is like, decades ahead of its time. It's insane. Like, people say it was the claustrophobic and smog-filled working-class environment of Birmingham in the 70s and 60s, which caused Black Sabbath to be so heavy and depressing. But again, that's up for debate. But were Black Sabbath the first metal band? Did they release the first metal album? Now, I'm going to use this opportunity here in this section to name a few lesser-known albums that may have been released around or before Black Sabbath's self-titled, which went under the radar, as it were. So the first band I'm going to mention is Blue Cheer. Has anybody heard of Blue Cheer?
No, I haven't, I'll be honest with you. That's not a band I have heard of.
So they're another heavy blues band. Another heavy blues band, just like Sabbath were. Specifically, in 1968, they released an album called Vincebus Eruptum. So that's pipping Sabbath to the post by 2 fucking years. Now, I'm not saying Blue Cheer invented metal, and they certainly have more blues in their blood than Sabbath do, than the sooty, kind of grimy, slow Birmingham kind of doom that they were doing. Blue Cheer, not to be sniffed at. Blue Cheer are definitely a proto-metal band. Similarly, I'll draw your attention to a band called Sir Lord Baltimore, in particular their 1970 album Kingdom Come, filled with strutting psychedelic blues rock, surely another contender for a proto-metal band overlooked by the festering masses. And finally, on that note, most importantly, is a band called Coven, a female-fronted occult rock band that used distorted guitars, much in the way Sabbath did, and also used similar satanic themes. Their album 1969's Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reaps Souls not only predates Sabbath's self-titled, it is a record that is still emulated to this day in its spooky look and feel, and is a cult rock vibe from the smallest, obscurest doom metal band all the way through to metal giants like Ghost. It is vital, yet flies literally under the radar completely. Since I'm just fucking spewing these out, other contenders for the proto-metal tag include The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, Germany's Gomorrah. I am the Lord of Hellfire, and I give you fire. What a tune. Like stonery, like hippie bands like Leafhound. I would recommend 1971's subtly named Growers of Mushroom, a fantastic album. Black Widow are worth a mention, as of course are Led Zeppelin for their dirty and distorted guitar work, as is of course the legendary Jimi Hendrix for his distorted guitar playing.
I was going to mention Jimi Hendrix when you brought the Kinks up, actually, about the whole distortion thing, because he was supposedly one of the people to invent it, I guess, in a way, by kicking his guitar amp, I think it was, rather than purposely cutting the tones. But I don't know if that's true or not. I've got no evidence to back that up, so... But yeah...
wild speculation will do. It's just what we do on Steegcast,
Yeah. The second band you mentioned was Sir
Lord Baltimore.
Yeah, so I had a listen. May as well mention it now while we're here. We do have a playlist that we're chucking up after this episode on Spotify of, most of the tracks that most of the artists Sean's talked about and stuff. There will be ones that he may not have, but it's just kind of a whole, I don't know, metal playlist essentially by Steegcast.
Exactly.
So I had to listen to that, and that one of the song of that band came up that you put on, and I really enjoyed the music. But then he started singing, and I just went, "Nah, I'm done. I'm out." I just was not a fan of the singing, But cracking music, really good music. Enjoyed that.
A lot of those are just blues bands that are playing with heavy distortion. They've all got that same kind of vibe, same kind of sound.
I mean, rock music in general was birthed from blues. It's blues music. That is the sort of beginning. Well,
that's it. Like Jimi Hendrix, perfect example. He is blues on fire. You know what I mean? He's literally that's especially the passion and the struggle of it's basically white people stealing black music. That is literally musical history. The end.
Isn't that how it's gone? Yeah, always
So moving on then, metal into the 70s continued much in this vein. It steered somewhat away from blues and began to find its own feet. It would really enter the realms of excess in the 80s and begin to splinter off into more different niche corridors of sounds. But yes, the 70s are not to be overlooked. In the 70s, a lot of metal and rock bands, the terms were kind of used interchangeably because metal wasn't really a thing probably until like mid-70s, and then like it just kind of got used interchangeably, heavy metal, hard rock, all the rest of it. It's worth mentioning a few bands that sprung up and released groundbreaking metal or hard rock albums in the 70s, to name but a few. I had AC/DC not included on the list, but stuff like that, AC/DC, Kiss, bands I don't really consider to be metal, but I know the Steegs like... Some Steegs, other than myself, you like some like 70s rock, hard rock stuff. So,
yeah.
Anyone you want to chuck in here?
I'd probably say Thin Lizzy, to be honest with you.
It's a good shout.
I would chuck Thin Lizzy.
Cream around.
Cream again. That's a fucking shout. I think Cream might even be late 60s. Fucking Cream, Clapton and Cream. How could I miss them? Guitar again. It's just, yeah.
Decent sound. White Room, innit? White Room.
It's this thing about metal. It's such a wide genre. It's just there's so many easy to miss.
Yeah,
easy to miss bands.
That's back in proto metal easily. Fucking Cream 66 first record.
66.
So I don't know whether the fucking 66 to like and early 70s. Amazing. Will I be buggered? Yeah. Clapton, of course. Good shout, fucking good shout. Thin Lizzy as well, very influential. I mean, Metallica covered them on the fucking, on the Damage Inc. Anything that's on Damage Inc. is not Damage. Is it Garage Inc. The covers album by Metallica? Is a good roadmap for what was influencing metal in the early 80s. Thin Lizzy's on there with Whiskey in a Jar. Even though I think that was added later in the 90s reissue of that album, they obviously did a video for it. And
the Thin Lizzy are a very influential band for a lot of bands, and it's quite surprising, really. I always think of them as being a bit underrated because they're never mentioned in the same highs as certain bands, but I think they should be. Well, that's my personal opinion, anyway. Because in terms of guitar playing and bass playing, vocals, even drumming, there's just the entire band was good at what they did, and I would definitely put them in there. Another one is a Welsh band. What's it called? Budgie? Is it Budgie?
I know Budgie.
Budgie.
I
Yeah.
thought you were going to say Badfinger, but Budgie is.
I don't know when they were out though. That might be 80s. Was that 80s or 70s? I'm sure Metallica was influenced by it.
Budgie, founded in 67.
There we go. Yeah, so
classic hard rock. Originally from Cardiff, Wales, relocated to San Antonio, Texas.
Well,
yeah. So this is why Metallica. Big fans of Budgie. So this is from, I think Andy Brotherton told me this one day. But yeah, they are a big influence of Metallica. Budgie.
And this is perfect. This fits perfect into the era that we're currently on in the cast as well. Their first album, self-titled, was 71. Budgie's self-titled album. I have never heard that. I need to listen to that. That's fucking great. That's another thing about metal, is that no matter how much you think you know, there's always something you haven't heard. Yeah. There's always something new. This is where linsinwax.com plug. I literally like an endless journey to fucking not just metal but everything. But it's just, you can get almost listener fatigue because there's so much music you will never hear, and it's like it's impossible to be an encyclopedia on something, especially something that's like 50 years old now. And all
it can be quite overwhelming, Sam.
It can be overwhelming. You can burn yourself out. That's why I do Lines in Wax, to write down every album I listen to and then write a bit about it. No one reads that website, but it's just, my reviews now are literally just a paragraph, but it's for me to like catalogue in my brain, because I gave up trying to buy all the albums I love years ago because it's just too expensive. But I can't just listen to I've listened to like 5, 6, 7 albums a day and then I'd forget what they were because there's so much and it does burn you out. But this slows me down a bit. Kind of. So anyway, some bands that I would chuck in this era, Motorhead developed. Of course, yeah. Again, a lot of people don't really consider Motorhead to be metal, but they developed like a swaggering rock meets punk kind of vibe before punk was even a genre in the late 70s.
They considered it thrash. I thought they sort of birthed the thrash movement of metal.
Definitely a massive influence on thrash metal. Absolutely. Even they kind of played thrash later in the 90s and in the 2000s. They kind of had that sound to them as well. But to start with, it was just like really heavy rock and roll, I guess. It was, at the time, again, really heavy. Just another quick disclaimer, I'm not touching punk with a fucking barge pole unless I have to, because it does cross over sometimes. You think metal fans are pedantic nerds who argue over obscure black metal on terrible internet forums, then you've never fallen foul of the punk police, my friends. They are fucking, they're out to get you.
It's kind of funny because they're all on about anarchy and all that shit.
Yeah, unless it's post-punk, it's just all nerds, man. You know?
Fair.
Ooh, Fugazi, man. I got this Fugazi first press. I remortgaged my house to buy it. Deep Purple, 70s Deep Purple band. Morphed their way through a series of explorative, yet still fairly heavy records. Of course, they're known for Smoke on the Water. Pretty much fucking definitive hard rock, heavy metal riff. So they formed in 1968. So they also have a claim at like the proto metal thing. I missed them off the list because I was mentioning that I'm here. Arguably, they didn't come into their own until 1970s Deep Purple in rock, and in 1972 they had the Machine Head album, which is like considered a classic of heavy metal. So if that's a shout out there. Listen to Machine Head by Deep Purple. Also, that obviously influenced the band Machine Head.
That's obviously where they got the name from, then.
Which are of varying quality, depending on which era you listen to. That's
talking to Deep Purple, then, what about people like Frank Zappa, then?
Frank Zappa, no. I love Zappa because he's absolutely off his fucking nut.
That's more like psychedelic, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
this is the thing, is trying to, I guess, pigeonhole some of these people can be quite difficult.
It is difficult. Yeah. And I started going down the Zappa route, and I was looking at like stuff he worked with, like Captain Beefheart and all this mental stuff, and I was like getting into jazz and like avant-garde, and I was like, this needs to stop somewhere. And Zappa can't really fall in.
Yeah,
I suppose he can. He's done loads of noisy shit, but like, it's hard. Do you like any particular Zappa?
No, my dad's a big Frank Zappa fan. I'm not, like, I know of the songs, but I don't really know them. You know what I mean? But growing up, I heard my fair share. So
Rainbow worth mentioning. Again, 70s band. Being tied to Sabbath in the form of Dio, and Deep Purple in the form of Richie Blackmore. Rainbow kind of existed as an amalgamation of other bands, even not maybe at the same time. Deep Purple members Ian Gillan and Glenn Hughes have both also been vocalists for Black Sabbath, but we'll get to that later on. An important one is again from England is Judas Priest, who really came into their own in the 70s. It's definitely touching on their evolution because they kind of started as just another rock band. Their first album, Rock and Roller, is just kind of boring rock music, but they kind of went on to release several groundbreaking albums in the 70s and became a metal band. Their albums like Sad Wings of Destiny, Killing Machine, Stained Class, all fucking really good, like, early metal albums. It's also worth mentioning that Judas Priest had the look down as well, with all that leather and fucking metal and motorcycles and all the rest of it.
Are they from Birmingham as well, did you say?
I think they might be, actually.
From Halford, isn't it, Judas Priest?
Birmingham is responsible for so much
they from Birmingham?
Metal music. I'll double check now.
I think they are. I'm sure they are.
In 1975, a small unknown band formed in East London. They wouldn't really make any waves until the new decade came around, but you may have heard of them, and we'll get to them in a bit. Again, finally going back to Black Sabbath, of course, they had what many considered to be their classic run in the 70s. Your 1970s self-titled we talked about quite a lot back then. That was followed up really quickly with the album Paranoid, which was like blew them up like worldwide. That was in the same year, so 2 albums in 1 year. Paranoid is originally supposed to be called War Pigs, but the record label was like, nah, son, not having it. So it's called Paranoid instead. Ironically, Paranoid was the song which everyone knows. They wrote that like as like the last-minute addition to the album. Master of Reality came out in 72, and Volume 4 came out in 72. No, Master of Reality was 71. Volume 4 was 72. So within 3 years, they had 4 albums, and it was just like, superstardom. Volume 4 was supposed to be called Snowblind, but again, the record label was like, nah, fam, you're not calling it Snowblind.
That's so they've got a song called War Pigs.
Yeah, I've got a song called War Pigs. It's the first song on the Paranoid album. It was supposed to be the name of the album.
But the album
what's wrong with Snowblind?
Is it?
Snowblind is a reference to, the song Snowblind starts with like a kind of sound. So like it's about taking loads of cocaine essentially.
Okay, right. That's no.
And they also have a song called Sweet Leaf, which starts with someone coughing. So it's like it's all like drugs, which of course was a bit more. Weren't so open about using drugs. People weren't like, oh yeah, I smoke weed. In the 70s, even though everyone was smoking weed in the 70s, just didn't want to admit it publicly.
It's funny that you mentioned Paranoid is just like a last minute song that became like their biggest track, basically.
Yeah, they Sabbath do not do.
That's happened to a few bands in history. Like,
it's great, isn't it? It's like
off the top of my head, I know like Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. I know that was Kurt Cobain's least favorite song, and he wanted it scrapped off the album completely, but the record label said no, that's a hit, and it was. I think it was the same with Basket Case as well. I'm sure Billy Joe didn't actually like the song, and it became one of their biggest hits. Like, so it's crazy when shit like that happens. Just like, you know, the quick like one-off track that you do to fill an album ends up becoming your biggest fucking hit. Crazy.
I think it was Creep by Radiohead as well, or is it just that they dislike that song because they played it so much? I can't remember.
I think they won't play it anymore.
I think that's bad though when bands do that, because they are sick of it. You know, it's not about them, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine how Metallica feel.
Metallica.
They look
to be fair, Metallica mix it up. They do play stuff from all over their catalogue, even the stuff that people hate, like stuff off Saint Anger and stuff. They still play it live. They just can't. Metallica can do what the fuck they want, realistically, which they did. That's where you got stuff like Saint Anger and the collab with Lou Reed, which is just.
I don't mind Saint Anger. I think I love Saint Anger. Album's all right. They do. I
love it, but that's hideously an unpopular opinion. Like
all about that snare, but all about that snare.
The snare is fantastic. That snare has a lot to answer for in my own musical journey. But yeah, through the 70s, then Sabbath kept releasing albums. They were fucking pumping them out. They had 8 albums in the 70s. They went on to do Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage after the Classic 4. Those 2 albums followed. One of them was recorded in the Haunted Castle we spoke about earlier. Can't remember which one. And then things like, they were like just on drugs all the time. Things were falling apart. Ozzy left and rejoined. The last 2 albums of the 70s are really like, Technical Ecstasy was their 7th, I think. And then after Ozzy left, he rejoined to record Never Say Die, which is just bad. And then Ozzy left. And that was basically Sabbath's classic run from like 70 to 78. And that was kind of like, they've been going ever since, more or less. But that was the Sabbath period, as it were. Yeah. So that leaves us basically, as Killing Joke once said, 80s. We are in the 80s. Killing Joke are not a metal band. That was a bad joke to make. I killed the joke. Yeah, Christ. Well, I'll keep talking. This is where metal changed and really came into its own. By the 80s, like, metal was a thing. It wasn't just like bands that were playing heavy. Ozzy fucked off from Sabbath. Dio fucked off from Rainbow. So, of course, Dio joined Sabbath. And in 1980, Sabbath got a second wind with the album Heaven and Hell. It's not one that I like personally. It kind of gets a bit... Dio is like really like... So, like, whether Ozzy is really like can't sing and bluesy, Dio is like I don't know if he's classically trained, but he's got that like proper like vocalist pipes on him. So yeah, they got a new lease of life with Dio as the vocalist. They released 2 albums in quick succession in the early 80s, Heaven and Hell, followed by Mob Rules. At this point, Bill Ward quit the band. I think he had a heart attack. He just quit the band. Too much coke. Dio would go on to record 2 more albums with Sabbath. A really random and little known one in the early 90s called Dehumanizer, which is super heavy. No one seems to like that one. That's my favourite fucking Dio album with Sabbath. And then again in the late 2000s, they reformed as a band called Heaven and Hell.
Heaven and Hell was the band then, yeah, that's right.
Which was the name of the first album they did with Dio, because they didn't want to incite the wrath of Sharon Osbourne's lawyers. I've not actually heard that album. I need to listen to that. Christ did that at the time. They came to Cardiff. Dio fronted Sabbath, and they played the Motorpoint. But I was just Mr. Grindcore back then, so I completely just fucking went over my head. But yeah, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself with this Dio business and this Sabbath business. 1980 was the year of metal. Fight me in the comments. Judas Priest released British Steel in 1970. Do you have anything to say
British
about
Steel is son?
British Steel, Gar? Have you got any notes on British Steel?
No, I did have the wrong. I prepped for the wrong metal, son.
Have you got a future with British Steel? Have you made plans for Nigel?
Well, yeah, of course I have.
That was an Ecstasy reference there. The band Ecstasy, not a metal band. Anyway, Judas Priest released British Steel. Arguably one of the greatest metal albums of all time. Absolutely perfect. start to finish. I think it has Breaking the Law on it, which is like one of the best fucking songs ever. Or has one of the best riffs ever.
Oh, it's an iconic riff, that is.
Yeah.
I think
Fight me in the
that,
comments. I like down, now, the breakdown bit. Is it a breakdown? Like the middle eight, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Yeah, and then that East London band I mentioned, they dropped an album in 1980 called
Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden, yeah, there we go. The band was also called Iron Maiden.
Hey, guys, we got the Maiden finally. We got this now.
Released their debut album in 1980 to much applause and without a Bruce Dickinson in sight. Maiden, of course, would go on to fucking dominate the metal landscape over the next 2 decades. The 80s alone seen year after year, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84 albums, self-titled Killers, Number the Beast, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, bang, year after year, fucking killing it, literally. Bruce Dickinson joined on the 3rd album, Number of the Beast. Arguably, that's when it kind of really got big. But Killers, the 2nd album with the original singer, I can't remember his name.
Paul Di'Anno?
Paul Di'Anno, I want to say Paul Di'Anno. They had a singer in the 90s as well, and Bruce left.
You need to clarify that for me.
Ripper Owens was the Judas Priest singer when Rob Halford left. Oh man! But anyway, all of these singers that may have once sang for Maiden or Judas Priest have all played The Crown and Fuel at least 3 times a year. So moving swiftly along, the 80s was also, of course, when metal started to develop its own subgenres. The first one, which is kind of forgotten today, has been more or less replaced by others which came after it, was speed metal. Now, metal has defined itself away from rock at this point, and even though what we know today is a slightly hammier, heavy metal, stuff like Whitesnake and all that shit, straight up metal had its own kind of punishing sound, and it was only natural, I suppose, for that sound to eventually get faster, more technical, and more punishing, brutal, whatever fucking words you want to use. Speed metal, then, was the overarching term that came first. One of these bands playing in this style was formed in 1981. A bunch of greasy teenagers, you may have heard of them, they were called Metallica. In 1982, they released a very influential album called Metal Up Your Ass. Does anyone like any speed or thrash or anything, that kind of stuff from the early 80s? Is anyone into that at all?
Crazy.
Not particularly.
Well, you've originally seen the Big Four, haven't you? I think.
Can I just quickly rewind and clarify that? Yes, Paul Di'Anno was the vocalist with Iron Maiden from 1977 to 1981.
Brilliant, thank you.
Job done. There we go. Moving on.
Yeah, I've seen the Big Four. Like I wouldn't say I don't enjoy it, but it's not like a lot of that sort of music isn't something that I'd sit down and just track on to listen to, in my spare time. It's something I more appreciate a lot more, I guess. Seeing it live was brilliant though. Like the was it Sonosphere I saw it?
Big Four, was it, son?
Yeah, the Big Four. It was really good.
Carlin, Strongbow.
It's like the atmosphere was great and stuff like that. You can't really beat it. So
I never used to like thrash because by the time we were into metal and I was getting into heavier metal and underground stuff, thrash just kind of seemed really tame. But in my old age, I really love thrash metal, which I never thought I would say. I'm really into like thrash. I'm working my way backwards through life, essentially. But this is where punk rears its ugly head again. I'm getting ahead of myself. I mentioned thrash, not speed metal. From speed metal, you got thrash. So bands were starting to take the ferocity of punk and the heaviness and speed rather of metal, and from that melting pot came thrash, more or less. I could be a little bit wrong there on my timeline. Feel free to correct me, Gareth Kirk. But not a million miles away from its speed metal brother, thrash became the hot topic of the mid-80s. So, let me put it to this, Steegs. What makes thrash? What defines thrash metal?
I thought it was the tempo.
Over metal.
I thought it was the tempo of the drums, or am I wrong?
I don't think that's a wrong answer at
I thought it was a lot to do with the tempo of it.
It is absolutely a lot faster,
the
generally.
beats per minute and things. Or am I wrong?
I think it's a hard and fast rule, and there's no wrong answers.
Is it just the vocalist just going...
Oh,
no, instead of...
very heavy guitars as well. Just
sometimes
even ear piercing guitars. I would describe it as like Metallica used to have like virtually no bass in their recordings. That sort of ear piercing, like.
I will like to say just quickly, they have remastered the early Metallica records, and they are fucking glorious. Like even still on Injustice for all the late '80s one, you can't still hear the bass on that, but all the others they sound fucking great. And they weren't afraid of putting the bass forward, even though it was kind of like mixed out in a lot of the.
As I said before, though, son, you can't hear the bass if the bass isn't even there. Like the bass isn't there to begin with. You can't just
Yeah,
unless you literally retrack it. There's no bass there. Like you can't invent that it was even
Metallica,
there. To me, it doesn't
famous,
sound like it's even there.
They're known for this, and it's memed a lot. But I'm talking pre Cliff Burton's death, to which point every album had a song which kind of really focused around the bass, like Orion off Master of Puppets or Pulling Teeth off Kill 'Em All. He's fucking. I guess like after he died, they were just afraid to really put the bass player forward. I don't know if they were like.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I really do. I think that is the reason. I think that is the sole reason, in fact, as well. I'll be honest with you.
Trouble is though, Metallica have had some amazing bass players. Jason Newsted is an amazing bass player, and
As is Rob Trujillo.
He was wasted in Metallica, and so was Rob Trujillo. He's wasted in Metallica. He played on so many groove metal bands. He played for Ozzy at one point. He played for Infectious Grooves. He's an incredible bass player.
Tendencies in money.
This is your Suicidal. That's the other Badger. That's the other one. I couldn't think what the name of it was.
He does have bass solos when they play live though. Rob Trujillo.
Yeah.
They do give him like a big bass solo. So
yeah,
that's pretty good. You can really see how good he is as well when they let him shine like that. So.
Oh, another song, bass forward, fucking From the Bell Tolls. Fucking bass riff is amazing. So this is thrash is probably the most well-known subgenre of metal, and genre greats include, of course, Metallica, Exodus, Megadeth, Slayer, Anthrax. Even though Anthrax are total fucking garbage, Death Angel. I also want to throw in some recommendations of my own, regardless of either. So these are some of the thrash bands I enjoy. Listen to me now. Hyrax, Superfast. Havoc, Superfast. Sodom, Superfast. Creator, Superfast. Wehrmacht, Superfast. They're almost grindcore side project of Wehrmacht. Spastic Blur, Superfast. Crossover thrash like Dirty Rotten Imbeciles, DRI. More thrash revival bands like Municipal Waste, Toxic Holocaust. Blackened thrash metal like Skeleton Witch or Midnight. A shout out to like more European thrash bands like Bulldozer. The excellent all-female band from Brazil, Nervosa. Fucking 10 out of 10. My absolute favourite thrash metal band though is a Canadian band called Voivod. They play like progressive, like proper sci-fi themed thrash metal with like these insane dissonant chords and like mental space concept albums and like fucking 10-minute songs and all this mental shit. They started off really fast, really heavy thrash, and they ended up being really experimental and weird. Jason Newsted joined Voivod after he got kicked out of Metallica, or he left Metallica, or whatever. Either way, I can't remember how it went down. But yeah, Voivod, can't fucking sell you Voivod enough. Fucking such a good band. Old Voivod, Killing Technology or Nothing Face. There's some albums for you to start. New Voivod, Target Earth or The Wake. Some albums for you to start. Get listening to Voivod, kids.
What would you class DRI as, son?
Crossover thrash initially. So they're a hardcore punk band that started doing thrash music.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Fucking great, man. DRI.
DRI banging. Pretty much my limitations of thrash go from Radio X on GTA.
I had a fucking load of them on there.
Yeah, that's pretty much my entire catalogue on thrash right there. Like,
some thrash metal on Guitar Hero, surely. Some Slayer.
Oh Christ, you're talking a few years back now. I've even got a playlist on Spotify that's just all the GTA fucking thrash songs. Like, it's just pretty good. Drive around thinking I'm fucking Trevor.
So you're thrashing like a maniac.
Thrashing everything.
It's funny how video games do have a part to play in introducing modern day at least people to that, because like in even not GTA 5, but the earlier GTAs had other music as well, didn't they? They had other radio stations. I think they may have been Radio X at that point, but they used to showcase like not just metal bands, but artists in general that are rock musicians. And then you got the Tony Hawk games, which are responsible for introducing people to many pop punk and ska bands.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love that. It's not done enough in modern games, in my opinion. There we go.
Come to think of it, you're right. Yeah, I found loads of bands through the Tony Hawk soundtrack, through the old GTA soundtracks. Yeah, definitely.
So they're not going to touch punk, but the one thing I remember from Tony Hawk most is Bad Religion.
Yeah.
I fucking love Bad Religion. And what song was it? You on Tony Hawk's? Tony Hawk's 2. They had the song You, and that album No Substance is just fucking such a good punk album.
Bands like Millencolin and things like that.
Millencolin,
That kind of punk as well.
Goldfinger as well. Goldfinger.
Yeah, Goldfinger. Actually, there's an AFI one of
CKY.
them as well.
Body
CKY
Jar's
96.
another one. I love the Body Jar song.
Body Jar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 out of 10. Yeah, video games are probably why I like metal. It was metal before I knew what metal was.
Yeah,
you know?
same.
Like Doom soundtrack, Quake 2. I'm sure there's more. Like Command and Conquer almost had like a kind of industrial kind of soundtrack. I don't really know. It's hard to remember really. What are you smoking, guy? Still cut, is it?
I like Gear Pencil.
So, 80s, late 80s now. All right. A lot of those thrash bands are on the playlist, by the way. One more band I want to mention as well is it's a modern band that did what Voivod do and dialed it up to 11 to make it even more crazy. It's a band called Vector with a K, with their Terminal Redux album. Again, space, sci-fi thrash, out the ass. But yeah, thrash metal in the late 80s set its own template for two favourite genres that would start to develop like little ugly bastard children. And let's start with something that gestated in the late 80s from thrash, taking it a little step further. Black metal. Black metal! Perfect. Fucking perfect. You sound just like, yeah, that's a really good impression. More accurately, what I'm referring to is the first wave of black metal. So I don't suppose, again, it's one of those things like when Sabbath first... I don't suppose at the time black metal was used as a term to describe these types of bands I'm going to talk about. But much like the term heavy metal didn't magically become applied to everything after January 1970, it's like, oh, boom metal's here. That didn't happen. And it's the same with black metal. But the first wave of black metal is easy to pinpoint. So the gestation of this genre comes down to two bands who started it. It's either Venom or Bathory on Arne. So it's either Venom or Bathory. But the metalheads will argue this to death on the internet, right? But the cold hard facts are Venom did it first. Fight me in the comments. Venom are from fucking Newcastle Pet, and they were very fast, very thrashy. And they also blended elements of Motorhead, and then really hammed up on the satanic stuff that Sabbath did, you know, Coven, all that stuff. So they were playing thrash with this satanic shit all over the top of it, and they had that like nasty kind of scuzzy punk attitude that Motorhead had. And it was all just really fast, really heavy, in your face. Metal played with a punk attitude. Snarly, raspy vocals, and really stepping in the next direction of extremity. Fucking hell. Anyway, but with a lot of things like this, it wasn't until the band released an album, I think it was their second album, and it was called Black Metal, did the term really enter circulation. They didn't like go, oh, this is our genre, black metal. They were just like, what can we call this album? Black Metal. So they also have a song called Black Metal. Venom have had a long and arduous career, which I won't go into, but their shock rock antics, no doubt the founding cornerstones of black metal, which was of course taken from the album title. But then a musician across the stream up in some Scandinavian country, which I don't know, I should have researched better. A dude called Quothorn was very taken and very influenced by what Venom were doing when he founded a band that would take the sound another step further again, and that into stage left or stage right, Bathory. Okay, so bear with me on this, right? Bathory may not have been the first, but they definitely laid a template for what, and I apologise for using the elitist term, true black metal is. So Bathory self-titled, entitled Bathory. It's just a picture of a fucking goat on the front. How cool is that? How metal is that? It's a fucking goat. You know what I mean? I Raise You Iowa by Slipknot.
Didn't we do that too?
That was a sheep or lamb.
It was a lamb.
It was a lamb. Which was not really related to Bathory. It wasn't a parody or anything. It was just because we were Welsh. Yeah, lamb, yeah. The Bathory self-titled record is absolute bastard. Like, it's short, it's muddy, it's horrible, it's savage. It's just horrendous. The Bathory would go on to become much more progressive. They ended up doing like this really like Viking metal shit, which is great in its own way, but they kind of transcended out of. They made their mark on what black metal would be, and then they fucked off, did other stuff. At this time in the formative years of black metal, it's also worth mentioning Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, and Sarcophago as proto-black metal bands, emerging from the thrash metal bogs the world over. Anyway, we'll come back to black metal in a bit.
Just curious though, who done corpse paint first? Where did corpse paint come from?
No. So corpse paint is a tricky one. Corpse paint, the term, and we'll come back to that in more detail later on with the second wave of black metal, the Norwegian stuff. Right. But metal makeup and shit, where did it start? King Diamond, Alice Cooper, Kiss. Where did it start? It's just all that. Just metal. When you look at like these subgenres of metal, it's just eventually just got more and more extreme. You know, if you look at like some of the most mental, like hanging looking corpse paint, it's basically just fucking the Cat from Kiss, but 20 years later. You know, I'm trying to think of else paints their face up. Saying Clown Posse, that doesn't count. Alice Cooper definitely, because he had the skull.
Who's the Cat? Peter Criss was it Peter Criss the Cat?
I should have known you weren't a Kiss fan when you came as Peter Criss, Lois. Not even Peter Criss wants to be Peter Criss.
Is he the Cat? I can't remember a Kiss now. Is he the Cat?
I think I don't know, to be honest.
I apologise if I've got that wrong. Yeah.
But corpse paint is, you know, especially in modern day, it is a
Big Red will find out now.
Of metal. Yeah, get Googling.
All right.
King Diamond, I think, because he had a lot of satanic and heavy kind of, you know, occultic kind of themes. He definitely, King Diamond, probably one of the first ones.
I can confirm that Peter Criss was the Cat in Kiss.
Oh, there we go. Right, I'm glad of that. I would have had a million comments saying I was wrong otherwise.
That'll ease your mind, Gar. There we go.
Yeah, cracking. So wait.
In a similar vein, around the same time, give or take, as this first wave of black metal, bands were doing similar work in pushing thrash to its extremities in other ways. As the 80s went on, thrash was becoming faster, more brutal. It was almost unrecognizable in some regards. And another musical term was needed to flesh out what was going on. So enter stage right, or stage left, death metal. Now, once again, there's some fierce argument over who released the first death metal album. The general consensus is the term came from the band Death, whose name lent the term death metal. Their first album, Scream Bloody Gore, is considered to be, by many, the ultimate and, of course, first true death metal album. For the sake of completion, I will fill in the fact that other contenders for the first past the post race for death metal include Possessed and their album Seven Churches, which is fucking great, and Master with their self-titled record, Master, another amazing metal album. Just as a side note, there are now recordings of Master's self-titled that is available without triggers, like they found the original mixes, and you can take the triggers out and it sounds so much fucking better. But before I forge into the 90s, because I'm going through this as fast as I can, because I know I've got a lot to get through, and expand on those more obscure genres a little bit, can I just go through with this, Steegs, like I did with thrash? When you think of death metal, what does death metal mean to the Steegs? What does death metal conjure up for you? What sounds, what images, what is death metal? A lot of people use the term death metal when it's not necessarily
death metal.
That's what I was just about to say. A lot of people use it for different things. Like one death metal band could sound completely different to another. You know, there's a spectrum. There's subgenres within death metal itself. I'd say that.
Absolutely, there is. Death metal is fucking. I can't go into that. There's no time. But there's so many different fucking.
What qualities have you got to have to to be considered death metal? Is my question. No. You know, as an artist, what are the foundations of being a death metal band or artist?
So it's kind of what I was asking. What would you?
Yeah, that's what I don't know myself. I'd be honest with you.
Well, I think the number one thing would be the Cookie Monster vocals. Death metal is all about that shit, you know, the really low guttural.
Is it the themes and the topics though? Is what I'm getting at more as well in terms of the songwriting, the actual. The themes and the topics of vocally, lyric-wise, whatever.
Traditionally, you're absolutely right. Things were just generally quite extreme, more based on like horror movies and gore and death and pain and all this like early Cannibal Corpse stuff like that. It's just really bad, gory shit. Well, obviously, death, scream, bloody gore is has all this type of stuff on it too.
The iconography, I imagine, as well.
The imagery, definitely, yeah.
The imagery and the iconography.
It's when logos started to get really fucking spiny and messy and disgusting. You needed images that matched the brutality of the sound. And, you know, right or wrong, a lot of offensive stuff is, stuff like is I don't know where I'm going with this, but like,
there's bands like you mentioned, Cannibal Corpse, and then you got like fucking, dare I say, Bring Me the Horizon and stuff. You know, they some people would consider them death, and there's a divide there that's fucking massive.
No. Bring Me the Horizon are as mainstream as they come now.
Mainstream or not?
When
were they ever that? Were they ever that? Even when they were heavy, they were sort of like a mole goth kind of.
Cool.
I like
scene kids. They were all scene kids, like.
But without death metal, there would have been no Bring Me the Horizon. Without a shadow of doubt, there would have been no deathcore.
Very influential.
Deathcore, yeah, that's more what I was thinking of. The deathcore kind of scene stemmed from it.
This death metal led to like, again, the punk influence in death metal then came across like bands like Entombed, started using like hardcore riffs in death metal, and that kind of birthed like this whole Scandinavian sound, and you had bands like At the Gates then, who kind of made that a bit more commercial, and that really just was like the stepping stone for metalcore. And you had like the whole like Swedish kind of melodic death metal stuff like Arch Enemy, Carcass's latest stuff. It just goes on and on. It's just like such a deep genre, but when it started, it was all like just how brutal you get, like all like and like talking about chopped up bodies and all this mad shit. But yeah, and on that note, just before I hit the 90s and chill things out a bit, it's worth touching on grindcore, which I won't go into too much because I'm biased when it comes to grindcore, but it's where thrash or death metal met hardcore punk. Again, punk comes into it, and it creates like this whirlwind of intense speed and aggression. It's all about speed. And I'm only going to touch on grindcore because technically it's not metal. It's probably my favorite genre of music and has been a large part of my life. For the sake of metal, I won't go into it too heavily. And I mentioned grindcore only because of one thing: the blast beat. Do anyone know what a blast beat is?
Well, yeah.
So, as with a lot of things in this cast, the origin of the blast beat is debated. A lot of 80s hardcore punk bands like Deep Wound or Siege used drumming styles that are very similar to blast beats. For me, I think the almost first blast beat is the band Repulsion. Used thrash beats that was so fast on their album Horrifying. Just the track Stench of Burning Death is on the playlist. Just listen to that. It's almost blast beats in pace. Yes, mate.
Do you want to maybe explain a blast beat to people who might not know? Because all we did was visual cues.
Of course. So what is a blast beat technically? Maybe because I'm a drummer, I've always been surprised that people can't really grasp what it is. It fries my head. It's just drums played really fast. So grindcore, think of blast beats from its origin. Grindcore by nature is not difficult to play. It's usually metal done really fast in a punk kind of template. I've found, however, that you simply have to want to play that kind of genre of music. It may sound totally obvious, but the world is so small in that kind of underground and so distinctive. You have to have vested interest to play something as ridiculous as like on the drums. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what I'm trying to say is, like, if you can do good blast beats, people will be all over you. If you can do a blast beat, like, usually drunken gig goers, like, after you've done a set, oh my god, I've never seen anyone do that. Oh, I haven't seen someone do that since fucking I saw Napalm Death in a random Rondra Hotel in 1989 or something, you know. And then you get all it. But I digress. What I'm trying to say is I find it surprising how much a blast beat can baffle even the most established musician. So a blast beat is,
I can relate to that.
Traditionally, it's not double pedal. It's 1 foot, and it's the snare and the bass drum. It's like, but really fast. So in 16th beats, depends on what type of that tempo you're doing. It's going to be like, so it's going to be like snare kick. So like back and forth, really fast.
Like a machine gun, basically.
Like a machine gun fire, and you're absolutely right. That's a really good way of putting it. And so people seem to think that music descends into complete utter chaos when a blast beat comes in, and it's like a free-for-all, which is not the case. Music like that does exist. I mean, you got the noise and noisecore and all this, even some grind, which just has wanton disregard for song structure. But I can't work like that. A song that has a blast beat section does not necessarily have to descend into universal pandemonium. It's just stuff happening really quickly. So like, I feel like I'm rambling now, but like, another related problem, and I think this is where you can relate, guys, when a song contains a part that has blast beats.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that...
I was just going to move on to that now. I tried to have a bit of a few times. I tried to have a bit of a sort of jam with a grindcore project the Sean was doing at the time. Now I've played most kind of genres and stuff as a bass player, but when it comes to this, I found that I really struggled in that environment to keep time and to lock in with. It was almost like starting afresh. It was like completely starting over as a musician again. I just could not lock in with it. I found it a completely alien world, especially with the blast beats and whatnot. And
The way I think of it when you keep up with blast beats is you just look for if it's in a 4/4 time, obviously you just listen for the 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just follow
keep counting.
that. Yeah,
you just keep counting, and nothing changes. Yeah. It's not like you enter a completely different time zone or whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's the same, and that's what your problem you had, guys, is really common. Everyone thinks everything speeds up. The only thing that's speeding up is the drums.
Yeah, I think you'd find that a lot though. So you put like a jazz musician or something into a grindcore band or any other kind. I think you'd find the same sort of.
Oh, I don't know.
I would argue that jazz.
I think a jazz musician is probably the worst example you're going to give it.
Yeah, jazz and grind go hand in hand. There's a lot of jazz drummers that can do that and more, like literally. And yeah, I Raise You Naked City by John Zorn. Just listen to that. This is so common. It was actually mentioned in Napalm Death's Best Of. It was a crappy compilation that Uric really kind of just put out. There wasn't really anything of value on it. Well, the best of Napalm Death. But there's like this huge like line notes section, and there's a funny little piece in there. The album's called Noise for Music's Sake, if anyone cares. But it first enlightened me to the problem back when I was a teenager. So it says in there they were auditioning for a replacement guitarist when Bill Steele left to join Carcass. The band found it maddening that nobody that auditioned could keep time. As soon as the blasts came in, just like you got, it was just like everything was speeding up. I was like, no. It's the same. It's the fucking same. It's only the drums that are getting fast. The guitarists will riff, the vocals will vocalate, and the drums enter in and out of blast beats as the song structure dictates. Everything else stays the same. In my experience, that's the way I would probably try and explain it. It feels weird to harp on this, but it does feel, especially because everyone thinks that grindcore is just worthless noise. I've fought against that my whole life's not a fucking hill to die on, is it? But like, it baffles me to no end. As grindcore is not hard to play. It's just basic maths of music just sped up like fucking really fast.
I think a lot of people think it's worthless noise because like fucking Anal Cunt comes to mind, doesn't it? You know, that's the band guy.
Yeah, you have grind and noisecore. That was a subgenre of grind. That is literally just that. Like the two times I've toured with a grindcore band, I've also toured with a noise or go noise band, which literally didn't rehearse ever. They've never awesome. Rehearsed. You know, every song, every set is a fresh. You know, they fall into grooves with each other. And I when they fall into a groove, it's just like, how have you done this? I appreciate it, but I could never work like that. I'd fright my head.
I remember a gig you played, Sean, with Judas Cradle in Cardiff in the full moon. It was upstairs in the full moon, and you had a noise act supporting.
Yeah, Riffs and Omens.
Yeah, I just couldn't get it. I didn't understand. Like, as like, you know, as a musician, whatever. Like, I can always appreciate different styles of music, or whatever. But for me, that was literally just noise. Just, you know, with different pedals and pushing. It could be noise. Can be anything. It can be almost soundscapes. Like, you know, like Wraiths and Omens were quite moody and dark and trying to build like an atmosphere. Then you have noise, which, like grindcore, is just trying to bash you in the face with the most abrasive sound ever. So it is a lot to noise. And it's subjective. I know music is subjective to everyone. You know, it's just what you like. Basically, you know, some people might see art in places that other people just see shit. So
noise is more, I think, performance art than it is music. Noise is more an art thing than a music thing. I think. I don't really claim to know or understand noise. I like some noise, but I don't really understand it.
Would you say it's the modern art of the music world?
It's the typical, it's the antithesis of music, isn't it? Noise, you know, and the fact you can bottle noise and release it as an album. Listen to Merzbow's Pulse Demon, like that's like really, really good selling album, and it's just fucking noise.
It's a kind of like Dadaism, like.
more or less in musical form. I won't be able to do noise a service. I know about it, but I'm not a noise nerd. I've made my own noise because anyone can, and I make a lot of it. I like it, and I record it onto tapes and stuff. But I wouldn't claim to sit here and tell you all about it and its history.
Speaking of history, we'll be doing a history of metal today.
We are, yeah. So going back to grindcore, and why I've mentioned it is because of the blast beat, which became a thing throughout death metal and black metal and loads of genres really going forward, borrowed the blast beat. So like I said, I've lost my place. Repulsion's Horrified, probably one of the first examples, but then the blast beat was perfected again in Birmingham when a punk band called Napalm Death got themselves a drummer by the name of Mick Harris. I've just done a 36-minute video on the music of Mick Harris, so I won't stay here for too long. But Mick is not only credited for coining the term grindcore, he more or less fucking invented the blast beat as you know it today with that fucking really fast fucking machine gun fire. And I raise you Napalm Death's Scum and his Napalm Death's follow-up album From Enslavement to Obliteration. Just fucking insane, absolutely insane when it comes to drumming. And that's blast beat. That's where we were. And I just finished that section off. I'm not talking about grindcore, not talking about noise, not talking about blast beats. Line under it. Fucking hell.
So I know you're going to move on to the 90s now, aren't you? I think that's where we are. Just
oh shit.
As a side note, I'm just going to mention one band in the late 80s that I think is worth a mention in the history of metal, and that's Guns N' Roses.
Absolutely.
They are definitely worth a mention just because of how influential they were going forward. I think especially for guitarists, because Slash was a massive influence on many a person who grew up in the 90s and 2000s, myself included. He's one of my favourite guitarists. But
do you like Slash's Snake Pit? Slash's Snake Pit. You ever that band? Velvet Revolver is the other one.
I like Velvet Revolver. It was weird because I didn't like Stone Temple Pilots, which was Scott Weiland's band. I wasn't a fan of that. I wasn't really a fan of Slash's Snake Pit. I tried listening to it. I was like, yeah, I can get behind some of the the riffs and stuff, but it wasn't really for me. But Velvet Revolver I thought was a really nice blend, and they did some really good songs. But yeah, Guns N' Roses, I think that sound, it was it was something special. What's up?
Sean's fucking slugging whiskey out of the fucking bottle.
Right. Yeah, man. Do when I can. I've been talking for so long. Just getting some drinks in.
Yeah, the Guns N' Roses sound, I think it impacted a lot of bands going forward, especially through the 90s as well.
Oh, 100%.
I have not mentioned any cock rock, poodle rock, hair metal at all. So if you want to get them in now, get them in.
Whitesnake.
What you like about Whitesnake?
I don't know, I just throw them in there. Band not to forget.
Motley Crew.
Motley Crew, Def Leppard.
Def Leppard, yeah.
Europe almost.
Boston.
Right, finally. Boston. Yeah, they got riffs.
Yeah.
Toto. I wouldn't.
Thing is
pushing it for metal.
Thing is with Toto, yeah, I wouldn't class them as metal. I'd class them as rock.
I put your leg, man. Very, very good musicians, however, and very influential. And you'll find Toto, as I said before, Toto pop up on a lot of 80s pop songs that you don't realise.
They do?
Go to
session musicians. Yeah.
Michael Jackson albums being one.
Yeah,
I know they play on those albums quite a lot.
I'm not sponsored. I got the tube bottle opener and bottle. I'm not sponsored.
He loves his Belgian brews, old Burr.
That's great thing.
Yeah, but no,
absolutely. And it was definitely right to mention them, and I shouldn't have excluded them because those bands like the 80s excess, the whole excess of the 80s metal scene and hard rock, was not strictly metal. I guess it did do a lot to bring more mainstream listeners. Metal was mainstream then, and it brought loads of people listening into that world that never would have been in there. And that is fucking not a problem by me.
I think another one worth mentioning, especially from a guitarist point of view, is Van Halen, because
yes.
Massively influential. You really can't overlook that, because Eddie Van Halen changed the way a lot of guitarists play guitar today. Like, you know, the tap in and stuff like that. Without Van Halen, there wouldn't have been that. You know, metal wouldn't have looked like it does today. Basically, if it wasn't for Van Halen, it wouldn't have evolved like it did anyway. In my opinion, you know, very important in the history of metal is Eddie Van Halen.
Absolutely. Yeah, cheers, man. Cheers for checking that in, because I completely overlooked that. We were talking about what I had yesterday, and I was like, fuck, that's a pretty important one to have missed. Because in the late 80s, I just kind of fell into these subgenres, and I completely missed. And that's why I put that disclaimer at the front as well, because I wasn't sure when this was going to come up.
It's a vast genre, man. You're going to miss things. It's just that big. So
I know I said I wouldn't talk about grindcore anymore, but I forgot to mention the grindcore bands that I recommend. So alongside Napalm Death and Repulsion, if anyone is interested in learning more about grindcore, I turn your attention to Terrorizer, Carcass, Old Bloody Drivers, Agathocles, Brutal Truth, Last Days of Humanity. More modern bands such as Agoraphobic Nosebleed, Wormrot, Haggis, Insect Warfare, Archagathus, Six Brew Bantha, Unholy Grave, Sulfuric Cautery, Eternal Rot. I could go on, so I'm going to stop.
You're going to chuck Triple X Maniac in there, son?
Let's chuck Triple X Maniac in there. A subgenre, gore grind.
There's a band called Haggis.
Haggis, spelled incorrectly, but there is a band called Haggis, right. Yes. They're a vegan gore grind band. Which was the original irony, which a lot of people missed with Carcass's original, you know, they had those albums with all the dead bodies and stuff all over it. And you know, the point was that, you know, it was all meat and food mixed in with all these body parts, and it perhaps unsurprisingly that a band that would focus entirely on gore were vegetarians. I don't see, but yeah, anyway, so there's a lot of, like, because of other punk involvement in that, there is a lot of vegetarian and vegans in that world, and obviously the extreme music has extreme
it goes hand in hand, I thought, all that kind of thing, and veganism, and
there's early Agathocles EP, and I won't mention Grind again. There's an early Agathocles EP, and there's a picture of like a full body autopsy. It's all black and white, and there's like 4 or 5 doctors hanging around, and it's just this body that's been stripped and his guts are hanging out. And the title of the EP is "If This Is Gore, What Is Meat Then?" And it's just like, you know, it's all this activist kind of stuff, but they use like these really shocking images of like bodies and stuff, because try and make the comparison between that and animals. We're all the same, apparently. Anyway, 90s. Back in the 90s. So 90s, what was going on in the world of metal? Judas Priest, they're on their second wind. They're getting heavier, they're doing thrashy stuff. Albums like Painkiller, reminding everyone that old dogs can learn new tricks. And in the third decade of their career, bands can still release amazing fucking albums. Painkiller, fantastic Judas Priest album. Sabbath, still going in the 90s. They've been churning through shit albums and vocalists like it was no one's fucking business. Like I said, Deep Purple's Ian Gillan joined for the rather underrated Born Again. And then Deep Purple's Glenn Hughes also joined later on to lend his pipe to the absolute fucking travesty that was the Seventh Star album. But by the 90s, those Sabbath were on their 5th vocalist, Tony Martin, and releasing boring, stale stadium rock on albums like Tear and Cross Purposes.
I've never heard that era of Black Sabbath. We were on about talking about this recently.
It is bad.
I didn't even realise that it even existed, I don't think. So I'll be honest with you.
It was purposely buried by Sharon Osbourne.
Yeah.
None of those albums have been reissued. They're all really hard to get hold of. Some of them are on streaming platforms, but
I didn't even know that even existed. Like we said the other day, we were on about that, weren't we?
It was a labour of love going through them. They were fucking terrible. The final Sabbath album before they reformed with Ozzy recently was in 95 or 94, and it was called Forbidden. It was actually pretty heavy. It's just a really bad attempt at modernising with a 90s sound. It contained vocal lines from Ice-T. That's all I'm going to say.
Wow.
It is awful. So metal did spread itself a bit thin in the 90s in some ways. The excess of the 80s died off. I'm talking about mainstream metal here. Thrash was more or less dead. And the true innovation, in my eyes at least, went back underground, at least initially in the early 90s, in the form of death metal, black metal, and a small contingent of, just a quick mention here, doom metal bands. So doom as a genre worships the tropes built by Sabbath, I guess. Sludgy, bluesy riffs that Iommi did initially on the early albums. Songs about fucking weed, space, witches, all this shit. That's some excellent Doom.
Electric Wizard, is it? Like Electric Wizard?
Yes, Electric Wizard, Sleep, Pentagram, Trouble, Cathedral, St. Vitus, Candlemass. I could name you fucking hundreds of doom metal bands. Probably one of the more popular genres of metal these days. Electric Wizard. Just listen to Electric Wizard. That's all I can say. Or Sleep. Sleep's 1 hour song. Dope Smoker. Fucking fantastic.
Here's a question to bring up on a Metalcast. And one thing I noticed listening back to that playlist as well. Why is it that the metal genre that every single song is like over 5 minutes long?
I wouldn't say that was necessarily true.
It seems like a given. Like
Comparison to pop music, you mean?
Yeah, like, the average pop song is what, 3 minutes? I guess.
I would say the most realistic reason for that is because in the middle 8 it's probably extended to have a bunch of guitar solos in there. That would be my guess. And they always have like an intro as well, don't they? If you add that to like traditional song structure, then that would be that's just a wild stab in the dark.
I think
it's always really
pop songs and all that, they've got to have the hook within the first 30 seconds of a song as well. I'm not sure.
People aren't interested otherwise, are they?
Yeah, I'm not sure if metal became more about showing off their talents.
Skills. Yeah. I can get that. It's just it's something I've always noticed, and it's I just like because sometimes I think that some metal songs can be too long. Like I'm all for a good guitar solo, but when it just drags on, there is literally just no point in carrying it on.
Mate,
like,
was it November Rain?
You're talking to Mr. Grindcore, baby.
November Rain, yeah.
November Rain. Yeah.
That used to be on TV, like on Kerrang. They used to play that. Fucking hell. I know the opening, and that's it. I just turn it off.
Maybe Dope Smoker isn't for you, Rich. Doom metal tends to be really slow and really long. Like we're talking 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. Dope Smoker being 70 minutes, 64 minutes long.
Electric Wizard. I have listened to Electric Wizard, and I actually don't mind them. Like they're actually all right. I haven't listened to much to mine, but yeah. But I haven't listened to much to really gauge my interest in it. But I know when I listened to them before, I thought they were all right. Like, but when songs go on and on and on and on, it's just like
street lights, people like.
Yeah. Journey, are they a metal band? I cannot listen to that song without thinking of the Sopranos finale, and I have to cut the song at the same time the Sopranos finishes with the infamous cut to black. And every time I put Journey on, if it comes on the radio, I will turn it off the minute the Sopranos ends. Halfway through the song, like, but don't stop. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's universally known. Anyway, similar to doom metal, in pace, we had from the murky pits of grindcore and death metal. I'm just going to touch on this one. I only got a paragraph here. From the pits of grindcore and death metal grew a hazardous and short-lived blast furnace. That was industrial metal, spearheaded once again by Birmingham's often imitated Godflesh, who took the grime and hatred from genres like grind, the powerful riffing of doom and traditional metal like fellow Birmingham's Sabbath, and combined that with influences from outside of metal, namely noise artists, which we've just touched on, and industrial artists in their own right. So again, art groups and stuff. Worth mentioning Germany's Estrosende Neubauten, England's art collective turned electronics outfit Throbbing Gristle, and the harrowing, clanking nightmares conjured by New York's Swans, a band that openly despises metal, yet somehow managed to make the heaviest fucking albums of all time. But that's another subject for another time, not a metal band. Godflesh took all that, set it to a claustrophobic mechanical backbone using a drum machine, and the rhythm section influenced by the scummier end of post-punk like Killing Joke, fucking Big Black and all shit like that. This all swirls to perfection. This is not an advert, but this all swirls to perfection with Godflesh's Street Cleaner album, which is admittedly, I think it's 1989 actually, not 90s, but it's crushingly heavy, devastatingly catastrophic. Listen, and yeah, that was it was like someone knocking over a kiln full of fucking liquid metal. And that was it. There's a flash in the pan and it was gone. But a few years later, industrial metal was reduced to nothing more than crappy dance music for goths. An excuse to play repetitive guitars and have a crap drum machine instead of an actual drummer. But some prime examples of how industrial metal did have a positive influence on metal and rock going forward would be bands like Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, laser-focused precision heaviness used in bands like, in the 90s at least, Fear Factory or even early Rammstein.
Yeah.
Especially the first two albums, Herzleid and Sehnsucht, which basically industrial metal. Anyway.
That was the band that came to mind when you mentioned industrial metal, was Rammstein. That was the first one that popped into my head. Like,
they certainly made it a thing and then almost just transcended it.
What
Even
about
on Zona, there's like industrial parts, but sorry.
What about Gary Newman's later offerings?
Yes, absolutely. That would be the bad, crappy dance music for goths part of industrial metal. No, I say that affectionately.
And
Jenny Torturers, yeah.
And obviously, Mortis is industrial phase.
That is crappy dance music for goths. Is Mortis. Smell of Rain. What a danceable album. The Grudge, again, I could go into this, won't go into it. Mortis, you are absolutely right. His later albums anyway, his early albums are what's called Dungeon Synth. It's like really dark ambient fucking keyboard compositions.
Great
Dungeon
artist.
Synth. That sounds like something you'd have in the background of a D&D campaign or something.
It is, and it is perfect. And then when I was saying to you earlier, Tom, about I imported loads of tracks into my Morrowind game, it was all Mortis stuff at the time. Now I just go and I got so many Dungeon Synth bands that I like, or artists rather, and I just put their albums into the Morrowind game.
Nice.
But you're bringing it back into more real life and not obscure shit. Hip hop was starting to bleed into metal at this time, starting the whole alt metal movement, spearheaded with bands such as Faith No More. Faith No More, you may have heard of those, possibly. You want an all son, but you cannot have it. This practice can be traced back pre-90s as far as Anthrax's collaboration with Public Enemy, or even Aerosmith and Run DMC.
I was just thinking that, I was literally just thinking Walk This Way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until the 90s, though, that crossover really came into its own with metal. Like in the early 90s, full-on rapping started to trickle in, like Rage Against the Machine, stuff like that. Yeah. Whether you class that as metal or not. So I'm going quick again because I'm conscious how the time is going on. We'll come back to that in a few years and check on that kind of stuff because we can all talk about that together. But for now, I'd like to quickly detour once again to shadowy, misty Norway.
Shadows.
There it is.
Yeah, so we're an isolated scene of musicians out in Scandinavian countries like Norway, looked at the metal underground in disgust. Elitist dickheads tutting and stroking their goatees. As grindcore fell to the wayside, death metal became more mainstream. Bands now wore sunglasses and cargo pants instead of spikes and leather, and brutal death metal bands entered into a race to see who could make the cleanest and most technical album. These elitists look on and thought, what happened to underground metal, man? It used to be cool. And so they made it cool again, or at least what they thought was cool. And in a knee-jerk reaction to the clinical and big budget of 90s metal, specifically death metal, which was supposed to be underground, which it wasn't at that point, this second wave of black metal was born. A bunch of losers living in their mum's basements decided to make metal great again by employing spikes, leather, face paint, and by making the most crappy and horrendous recordings they could possibly manage. I'm talking about bands, of course, like Mayhem, Berzum, correctly pronounced Burzum, Dark Throne, Immortal, Emperor. These formed the core of this bizarre new movement. So what they did was take the sounds of the 80s in the form of Venom and Bathory and dialed it up to 11, basically, to quote Spinal Tap. So what do you think of when I say black metal? What do the Steegs think of?
I was thinking of your Burzums, your Mayhems.
More like Dark Throne, Dimmu Borgir. Kind of.
Dimmu Borgir is a good show. They're more the symphonic end.
Yeah,
they
more
had, like,
melodic.
A lot of classical. Yeah, absolutely.
But they got the corpse paint. It's just kind of the contrast. I'm probably gonna get. There's a lot of hate there for crossing them over with death metal, I imagine. But fuck it.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. Like Cradle of Filth, like one of the most well-known symphonic black metal bands, started with death metal roots. Their album, the demos, Orgiastic Pleasures, Foul, and Total Fucking Darkness, they are death metal records with keyboards over them. Fight me in the comments. Same with Dimmu Borgir, they have death metal albums. In Sword Diabli, it crosses over a lot. But in particular, in 90s Norwegian black metal, it was horrendous. horrendous music. So to the untrained ear, your average true black metal, true cult black metal, is like an unlistenable mush of wasp-like guitars, unnecessary reverb and distortion, vocalists with frogs in their throats, and entire drum kits recorded using like one microphone, shit like that. It's a fucking mess usually, but the thing about it is like the cold, almost ironic antithesis is that from most black metal worth listening to, through all that chaos, you get this morose kind of melodic edge, and I feel like I'm getting a bit hipstery now, but like only just, and like that sparse kind of melodic edge leads this like, gives it a beauty, you know, and to these really harsh and often ear-piercing compositions. Great black metal conjures up cold, barren landscapes, rolling hills, fjords, and unfathomable lakes filled with demonic horrors. There is an unholy art to black metal, but I am waffling, so let's move on a little bit. Personally, I think black metal would have perhaps rightly stayed as an outsider genre because it came everything it set out not to be, and became really popular in the mainstream of metal. And it wasn't necessarily because of the music; it was because of the worryingly strong conviction of the musicians involved in this unholy music. Basically, a spate of church burnings started to take place around Norway, which no doubt seemed cool at first, like church burnings, but like it drew a lot of unwanted attention onto the black metal world. The most famous church burning would be the Fantoft Stave Church, which was built in 1150. They burned a fucking 800-year-old church to the ground, which obviously just put them straight in the spotlight. This tiny little scene of like maybe 10, 15 bands was now like boom, you know, worldwide. Like I'm generally a very anti-religious person, but how does
a genre of music get accused of burning a church?
Because it was a very small circle of people. This entire, like, to begin with, the entire second wave of black metal was one scene in, like, Bergen.
Say one of us burnt the church. You wouldn't go, like, to the podcaster down the road and blame him as well, would you?
Well, this is it, because they were publicly known. Like,
we look at podcasts.
Those fucking podcasters burn the churches.
I wasn't going to go into this for time purposes, but they were all part of what was called the inner circle or the black circle. So, like, we're the Steegcast, you were out burning churches. And we're like, who burnt that church? Steegcast burnt it, you know? It was like the black circle of Norwegian true black metal burnt that church down. Right. They want to return to like pagan roots, and then they want Christianity's stranglehold on Norway gone, you know? They're willing to fight to the death for it and all this shit, you know? It's bullshit, absolute bullshit. But obviously that turned the fucking spotlight on them. I'm a very anti-religious person, but how much of a cock you have to be to burn down a fucking 800-year-old building?
There's history at the end of the day.
Exactly, history. You know, it's crazy. So images of the shell of that burnt church appears on Burzum's Ask EP, which means ashes. Initial copies of which came with a free lighter. So yeah, it was.
Oh my god!
Great.
Burzum's sole member, Vargvikernes, I don't know how you say his name. He ended up being charged with most of those arsons, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I could spend hours talking about black metal, but I won't. There are many videos online that go into the atrocities committed by this small group of dickheads. I will quickly touch on a few of the more unsavoury points here because it's very sensational and I have to get them into the history of metal. All of which ensured that black metal stayed firmly in the mainstream spotlight in the early 90s and continues to attract edgelords and Nazi dickheads to this very day. Although, first off, it's worth noting that a firefighter died whilst fighting one of the church fires, so fuck them for that. Yeah. For first thing off. Another thing that kept the spotlight, one of the first things that kept the spotlight on black metal, Emperor drummer, who uses the pseudonym Faust, whilst wandering through the woods at night, as you do, was propositioned for sex by a gay man, who mistook him for another gay man. And Faust reacted calmly and reasonably by stabbing the gay man to death and being sent to prison for his murder. So that obviously kept the spotlight on him. Yeah. Then you had Mayhem's second vocalist, a very troubled individual who was assumed the stage name Dead. Literally dead. He would like bury his clothes in the ground for days and then like wear them, dig them up and wear them so they would stink of death and just decomposition and be damp and rotten. And he's credited for like perfecting the corpse paint look, as you brought up earlier on. which he did to just look like a dead body more than anything. And he would often self-harm whilst performing live with Mayhem. And he was a generally mental and well and needed help. And he one day blew his fucking head apart with a shotgun in the band's shared home, and left a note that said, "Excuse the blood." He also left the band a song, perhaps ironically titled "Life Eternal," which ended up on the next Mayhem album, The Mystery Storm Satanas. But what makes Dead's death, even though it did obviously turn the press and the mainstream media back onto black metal, what makes Dead's death even more disturbing is that when his corpse was discovered by Mayhem guitarist and a record label boss, Hieronymus, instead of calling the authorities, Hieronymus took pictures of his dead band member's body and took fragments of his skull to make necklaces.
That's right, yeah, I remember that.
The authenticity of the second
documentary
act
on that
has been called into question, but apparently it did happen. The current and longest running Mayhem bass player, Necro Butcher, originally left Mayhem because of those acts. He was like, "You literally taking photos of and pulling apart the corpse of my friend. What is fucking wrong with you?" So they split up for a bit after that. That photo then ended up on the live album for Mayhem, Dawn of the Black Hearts. So if you go on the internet, type in Mayhem, Dawn of the Black Hearts, there's a picture of Dead with his fucking head blown off, still clutching the shotgun that he killed himself with.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's... Wow.
The black metal chaos would come to a peak with the death of Hieronymus himself, who was stabbed over 20 times, mostly in the head and face, by Burzum's Varg Vikernes, the guy who burnt down all the churches. That was kind of killed it dead then. That was when it all kind of spread to other countries, and it was just, but the Norwegian scene ended more or less at that point, and the initial kind of gestation of it. But generally, basically what I'm saying is if all that mad shit didn't happen, I had to get it in the cast. If all that mad shit didn't happen, black metal would have just stayed obscure, I reckon. But history has dictated otherwise. That's my bit on black metal. It was anyway fucking chaos.
Yeah,
Jesus.
that's
chaos.
Talk about like sensationalism to the max. Like that's fucking insane.
They were generating their own revenue, but at that point it was like it became what they set out not to be. Like super popular, everyone was into it, because it was just like, can you imagine, at one point, Burzum guy had killed Hieronymus, the Mayhem guitarist, he hadn't been apprehended, and he was like boasting about it in like Kerrang and shit, it's just nuts, man. Burzum guy's now been released from prison, and he makes dungeon synth dark ambient records, which are of mixed quality. I'll be doing another video on discography video. My second one will be on Burzum. Anyway, fuck all that shit. Remember we were talking about rap metal?
Yeah.
Call it what you want, right?
Yo, Red
Call
Cat.
it what you want. Yo, Red Call it rap metal, groove metal, alt metal, whatever you want, because similar to how speed metal was overshadowed by thrash, all of these terms were quickly overshadowed by nu metal, which came to life when a band from Bakersfield, California called Korn released a self-titled album about and they were mixing grunge and metal with hip-hop, kind of backbone, like bass and drums. And that's when nu metal started, and that's when my intense historical notes stopped, because we all know nu metal. We were there, so I want to talk about this together.
We were there, man.
For fucking ages. We were there. So, what do you remember about nu metal, guys?
Linkin Park.
Fantastic time.
Linkin
No
Park
regrets
came
at
to
all
my
of
house.
it.
It brings back memories of Napster and Kazaa for me. This is how I discovered all these bands was through
Zero regrets at all of any of that music.
but through pre-Metallica Napster and
Christ,
yeah.
You know what I remember doing? I remember I used to have a fucking flip phone, right? With a kind of shitty ass camera on it, and I used to record songs on fucking Kerrang and stuff. I'm fucking putting back.
yeah.
Jeez.
I used to do that with a handheld tape recorder, holds up to the television.
Great.
Yeah, bands.
Those were the days.
Sort of bands like, I listened to anyway. It was like Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, those sort of bands that were sort of my first introduction to, I guess, rock music. I guess, along with, like Green Day and Blink-182 as well, on like that sort of end of
Can't forget
of
Papa
rock.
Roach.
But I'm Papa
Don't
Roach
forget
as
Papa
well,
Roach.
obviously. But yeah, that was kind of like my gateway into what I listen to now, I guess. Is like, everyone grows up with a certain type of music, and that's what I grew up with, was that era, I guess.
Are there any new metal albums that still stand up today?
Ooh.
Hybrid Theory would definitely stand up to
Absolutely, Hybrid Theory.
I thought that, and I tried listening to Hybrid Theory, and I just can't do it.
I've listened
I
to
don't agree
Hybrid
with you.
Theory in the last
Timeless.
couple of months, I think. Yeah, it's a great album.
Yeah.
Someone's supposed to come in with a guitar, then you're fucking useless.
I'd say, I don't know. I guess I like. It's a bit later though. It's not because I really like subliminal verses, but I think that's a bit later on. But even Iowa,
we're talking a lot later, Sam.
Yeah,
talking a lot later.
But
Subliminal Verse was 2003. I would say
yeah.
nu metal was officially dead by then.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
But
I don't think Slipknot are fair. I know the first Slipknot started as a death metal band with jazz influences. You know, Matefield Kill
Was it
Repeat.
Dogfish
first album.
Rising or something like that?
Dogfish Rising. Fucking horrendous. They got Mr. Burns samples in there. Like, Smithers, get me this band. But yeah, I mean, the self-titled has a lot of tropes of nu metal. They got like almost hip hop kind of feel to some of the songs, and like there's like DJ cutting in there, and it's just like, I don't think Iowa is nu metal.
Well, you got Wait and Bleed though, and all that. That's a lot of fucking proper rap metal in there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I don't think it's quite rap, but it's like rapped almost, even though he's shouting or singing in the Terry Date remix. They always used to remix their singles. I don't know why they did that. More people listen to them, I suppose. Like if the album version of Wait and Bleed is a lot heavier than the
gives Sid Wilson something to do, wouldn't it? I guess.
But if you see the music video for Wait and Bleed or the music video for My Plague, they're completely different songs to the album versions. Totally different. You know. It's
definitely
weird. Really.
Are we going to talk about the origins of their masks, maybe, or is that's like a fucking whole thing, that isn't it?
It's not really. I think what they say is Clown just brought the mask along one day, chucked it on, and realised he played much more uninhibited with it on. Like he was doing all sorts of fucking stupid shit.
So it weren't like a diss to Mushroom Head?
No, that's what people say, isn't it? Is that what some Mushroom Head fans will say is that Mushroom Head, is that they'll say that Mushroom Head was being shopped around as a good selling independent band, and they got passed upon by some of the majors, and then the majors like Roadrunner manufactured their own masked nu metal band, and then they just pulled these death metal weirdos from Iowa and turned them into this band. You know, they were like, we're going to make you the next metal superstars. That's what people say.
Could it be big, kid?
I don't think that happened. I think both bands just happened to wear masks.
There's a war of words between Slipknot and Mushroom Head for a long time, wasn't there?
Mushroom Head. If you look this up, either Skinny from Mushroom Head or Corey Taylor from Slipknot will say it was more or less entirely perpetrated by the fandoms.
Right,
the bands have never really. There was one instant where Slipknot played Ohio, and they got fucking like bottled and shit by, and the fight started from Mushroom Head fans. So you're playing in that band's hometown, and you've been accused of stealing their image. I mean, at one point, they looked really similar, but the only reason both bands had jumpsuits and looked the same is because Mushroom Head thought the Slipknot stole their image. So they then just went full jumpsuits in black and that's how the X-Face came around for Mushroom Head. It was like all their masks were gone. Because Mushroom Head had a pig, Mushroom Head had a goat, Mushroom Head had all sorts of random shit, like clowns and stuff. So when they found Slipknot were a thing, they got rid of all the masks. And Mushroom Head had all different masks, and then they just had black face with the X's on their face.
The X's were fucking awesome, though.
That symbolised that their image had been stolen. So that's where the X-Face. I've got it on my arm. You can't see it, but yeah.
What about Slipknot and ICP? Was that a thing?
I don't think there's ever been a thing.
ICP
were just rappers.
It's a lot of bullshit. It's going to be, but they're like in a radio station. I think Slipknot are, and either ICP come like barreling in, or they phone.
This is all on Howard Stern stuff, isn't it?
It might be
Howard Stern show.
It seems like a Howard Stern kind of thing. Like alongside.
There's a Howard Stern with There's a really good Howard Stern with ICP and Sharon Osbourne, where she's like, your next album isn't going to sell any copies, and they bet live on air like 50 grand that their album will go gold, and it did. And like Sharon Osbourne never fucking gave them the money, which is funny really. But she was like, who are you? You're fucking nobody. My husband and his work are timeless. You're just some fucking flash in the pan. But ICP did a lot of nu metal stuff in the late 90s. That kind of feeds in. Again, wrestling music as well, that feeds in. ICP did the theme song for the Oddities.
That's actually
even wrestled for a bit.
That's something I was actually going to bring up was the
segue,
the link to wrestling, more namely, I guess, WWF or WWE as it's known now. they had so I think the lead music composer for WWF, Jim Johnston, he created most of the iconic sort of themes that
Jim Johnston.
like Steve Austin's theme and Rock's theme, stuff like that. He basically
Can you
composed all
smell?
that. Yeah.
If I could put in there right now a quote of like Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi going,
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
Jim Johnston. I had all the Jim Johnston CDs of all the themes. I fucking forgot. You know, it's a name you've just never heard or thought of for like at least 20 years. Wow, like Jim Johnston.
I think it was about 5 years ago. They unceremoniously just sacked him out of the blue for no reason, because they said that his music was dated and no one wanted to listen to it anymore, and hired like these really sort of young up and coming producers to do their new stuff. And now most of WWE's entrance themes are all like sort of pop and hip hop based. They're really bland as well. They're really bland.
Oh, it's gone now.
It is.
My I raise, why can't they just have both?
Well, exactly.
Why would they keep Jim Johnston around?
They do, because like some of the old like wrestlers are still around, so you still hear some of like the old themes, like you know, the sort of themes that you hear metal based, like Triple H is one, probably the main one with Motorhead. You know, it's actually Triple H has had 3 different themes. 2 of them, well, from bands anyway, from notable bands. So 2 of them were Motorhead. So it's The Game, I think, which was written. Was that written for Triple H?
It was written for Triple H. It was one of the exclusives on, like, I think volume 5 of like the Jim Johnston CDs, even though it wasn't Jim Johnston's music.
What was the other one? Bow Down to the Game was the other one that he came out to, and that was later on in his career. But then he also came out to Metallica at one WrestleMania. What song was it? For Whom the Bell Tolls, maybe. Metallica did his entrance theme for that. Edge, his theme is Alter Bridge, Metalingus, which is also on our playlist.
It is indeed.
We had then like Raw themes. So we had like Undertaker. Sorry, Undertaker had 2. He had Kid Rock for one.
American Badass, yeah.
He had American Badass, and he also had Rollin' by Limp Bizkit for a while as well.
Oh God, I forgot about that. Yeah.
So you had them. You had Drowning Pool doing the theme to SmackDown at one point. You had, God, I'm trying to think now. I know later on. Oh, you had Papa Roach doing the theme for Raw.
Didn't Union Underground have a theme for someone? It's like, play the fucking music.
That rings a bell now. You fucking said it.
Oh, you had, so Rob Zombie done a couple of songs. These are like pay-per-views. I've got a list of pay-per-views for me now. I'll list some of the bands. So obviously Limp Bizkit, AC/DC even done Highway to Hell for one of the pay-per-views. That was SummerSlam 98.
Did they perform live on there, or did they just do the song?
I don't think so. I think it's just a soundtrack. My Way by Limp Bizkit.
My Way or the Highway.
Bodies by Drowning Pool was for SummerSlam, but I think that ended up being SmackDown as well at one point. Saliva had a song on there. Puddle of Mud, Kid Rock, Rob Zombie, Creed. I didn't even know Creed did a song for WWF. There we go.
Arms wide open.
Yeah, and then you're coming into 2003 and stuff, and you had like Evanescence and people like that doing songs for him. I know Nickelback did the theme for Raw for a while with Burn It to the Ground, which is actually a really good song, and I hate to admit it, but it is a really good song. There's a really nice riff in it. Bands like Seether, Sevendust, Stained. There's a lot.
Okay.
Later on, you had CM Punk came, and his entrance theme for a long time was This Fire by Killswitch Engage, which I think is one of the best entrance themes to date. It's very notable guitar riff at the beginning. But yeah, and because of WWE, I think it introduced, I know definitely for me at least, it introduced me to a lot of music that I normally wouldn't have found. And it may not be so much metal in the music that I've introduced me to, but there was a lot of sort of like rock, just like hard rock sort of songs as well.
So I mean, the next what kind of fell when new metal was obviously one of the more popular things. But what was going on like around the time? Like I said, you had that melodic death metal, and that kind of led into metalcore, which had its roots in the early 90s, but then kind of became its thing in the early 2000s. And again, I haven't got no notes on metalcore because it wasn't really my thing, but it was a huge thing at the time.
My area though, Son and perhaps
There we go.
Richard.
This is much more your guys' area.
We
I
talking
remember
about
like,
your trio and stuff, are we? Or
Kill Switch, yeah.
Kill Switch, Shadows Fall almost. What was the other one? What was the one that had like The Worst Is Yet to Come? Still Remains.
Oh, that's
Still
a
Remains.
Christian rock band, they were some.
Were they really? I didn't know that.
Were indeed.
Yeah.
Were they talking about the Rapture then? The Worst Is Yet to Come.
Yeah, I would say that metalcore is actually the reason that we all know each other.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely.
We've got metalcore to thank for us knowing. Well, myself, Tom, and Gareth, have we mentioned in another episode somewhere along the line, we met in a metalcore band called Alkali back in the day, and we met Sean through Tom, who also played for Alkali in a brief period.
Sean was our session drummer.
So yeah,
we actually I learned very roughly learned The End of Heartache by Killswitch Engage.
Yeah,
to jam with you guys.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
metalcore. When I think of metalcore, the band that immediately pops in my head is Killswitch Engage. That is
absolutely.
I feel like they are the sort of poster band for metalcore, and for good reason, really. I think they've been pretty consistently good in that genre for
I'm
a long
outside.
time.
I'm outside of this world. I can't even think of any other metalcore bands, to be honest with you, other than the ones I just mentioned. Like, Still Remain. I don't know. Did they even count? I have no idea.
Yeah, I'd say they count. You got your trio, maybe even 18 Visions. What else you got?
18 Visions. Yeah, fuck. I forget these bands exist, man.
Remember 36 Crazy Fists?
I do. They were actually pretty good band. They were quite progressive in some of their own ways. The album Bitterness the Star. That's fucking really good album. 36 Crazy Fists. Lovely bass sound.
Some good stuff, yes. Some real good stuff they put out.
They were almost hardcore influenced in some ways.
You do have, Bullet for My Valentine would be metalcore as well. I know they sort of bleed into the...
That's a very good show. There are thrash influences there.
There's thrash influences there, but they are metal. You actually listen to the music and it is metal.
Yeah.
Same with, I think, what you've put on the playlist, Trivium. Again, another metalcore band with a lot of really, like, quite visible thrash metal influences, definitely.
Yeah, and Ascendancy is a great album. I remember when it first came out, I hated it. I couldn't stand Trivium when they first came out.
Like Trivium. It's Matt Heafy. When I listen to him, I can just see his face. No offense to Matt Heafy, it's never been for me. I remember when they did like an unannounced secret gig in Cardiff.
100 Guys have a different name, innit? I think that Ascendancy was the band name, I think.
But yeah, I remember when it came out in school, and I think it was because of certain people liking it, and when you're younger and you just don't like something because someone else likes it. It was that sort of thing. But when I actually sort of sat down and listened to it, I was like, actually, I actually enjoy this. This is good, and I always look for hooks and good guitaring. That's my basis of a good song, essentially, for me. Is if it's got nice guitars, it's got a good hook in it, I'm happy. For the most part. But yeah, Trivium, good band. Another one was As I Lay Dying.
Of course. He tried to kill his wife. He went to jail.
Did he?
He hired someone to kill his wife. Oh. The main guy, I can't think of his name. And he went to prison for it. What
about bands like Every Time I Die as well?
Oh, I love Every Time I Die. I wouldn't say they're metalcore as such. They got
I wouldn't.
They got like a western-y kind of influence. I don't know what I'd call it, really, to be honest, but...
Not metalcore, definitely.
I remember Every Time I Die getting lumped in with the whole southern rock kind of thing.
Southern rock, yeah, that's...
But I don't know if I'd call them that. They have that swagger to them. But southern rock, I just thought of all crap like Black Label Society and all that whiskey drinking like fucking redneck
Clutch and stuff like.
Yeah, I suppose. That's a good show.
Like
Clutch a fucking class though.
Clutch are pretty good, yeah. No, they're not like them. They are more metalcore than that type of genre, I suppose. I fucking love Every Time I Die. Fucking amazing.
They have like they almost have mathy elements, I would say.
Yeah.
Every Time I Die, like the spazzy little bits, like mental shit going on in there.
Another one on the playlist we had as well was Avenged Sevenfold, and they were pretty big.
Yes,
going through the mid 2000s. Another band. I can understand why people don't like them because of M Shadows' voice. I can really understand that. But like again, I think Sinister Gates is a really good guitarist, and that's kind of why I don't listen to them often, to be honest with you, but I don't mind when they come on. It's just one of those sort of bands, but I've always got time for Sinister Gates guitar playing because I think he's a
City
really
of
good
Evil.
guitarist.
City of Evil is a guilty pleasure for me. That album. Side A, the first 4 or 5 tracks are just like fucking banger after banger after banger. You got Beast of the Harlot.
Yeah.
City of Evil. And then they had one track off, I think it was a single off the next album called Almost Easy. I love that as well.
Yeah.
Even though I think that was used in wrestling, possibly.
Which song
Probably.
had the huge Fear and Loathing influence?
That was Bad Country,
Bad
was
Country, that was, yeah.
That's the fucker, yeah. Cracking video.
Someone hit me 'cause yeah.
That's the one.
You've also got...
He who makes a beast of himself. Yeah.
In that era, you had like deathcore, which we've touched on with Bring the Horizon. You had like Suicide Silence, Annotations, and an Autopsy. What have we got on the podcast, on the playlist? Whitechapel, I think.
Whitechapel and Parkway Drive. Do you put Parkway Drive on
Parkway
Have we got Bring Me the Horizon on there?
We haven't, no. Feel free to add it. Just check it on the end.
They have an
And then you
interesting
had, like,
band,
this-
Bring Me the Horizon. As I was saying earlier, they just seem to evolve and evolve and evolve, and it's constantly changing. Yet
Oh, they're
they
very
just
versatile.
still...
I
I appreciate. I do appreciate.
It's
They're
weird,
so genuine.
like with Bring Me, because like I really didn't like their early stuff. I can't stand their early stuff at all. But then as they evolved, there was a period where they had this sort of, they still had like a rough, gritty sound, but then they had a very melodic sound at the same time. And when they meshed those two, I thought, oh, they're actually onto something good here. And then they went off on one and went too far to one side, and it was like, oh, okay. But then their newest album, I had a listen. I was like, this isn't bad. And they done a song with Baby Metal on there, and that was insane. That song that's been on my regular rotation since that song. What's it called?
Do you like Baby Metal?
Kingslayer. And don't dislike, I would say, but it's there. It's not like, not an avid listener, but. Nah.
Funny thing about Baby Metal, they got like all those little girls, and then they got like this like Darth Vader samurai looking motherfucker that plays the guitar. He's like the most badass looking guy ever. Like he's like.
But no, I would say
also,
listen to the song Kingslayer because it's so good. It's just wicked. Like I actually got the instrumental of it. I found it online because I was doing a mashup in my spare time just for fun, and I listened to the instrumental all the way through. And I was like, oh, this is really good just on its own. Just like, without any vocals whatsoever, it just sounds really good. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And that was only released last year. So there we go. Jumping ahead a bit on that one. But.
So, quick honourable mentions that I didn't cover. One of them being Gent, which kind of comes into like the whole brocore, metalcore, deathcore thing. That kind of people kind of moved on to Gent, even though Gent was kind of Meshuggah being over fucking donkey's years. But
all the scene
Gent
kids,
is
all
like,
the old scene kids seem to roll into Gent.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, they just cut their fringes and and stretch their ears.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Cut the fringe, stretch
Gent
your ears.
is
You got to do it down tune the guitar a bit.
no, we're not down tuning. You buy a very expensive guitar with thicker strings, like 7, 8, 9 string. I don't know, do you get 9 strings, or is it just a meme? I'm not sure. I know you definitely get 8 strings and 7 strings.
Tune it down to earth.
Drop it.
Gent is all. I think the gent genre is named after the sound of the guitar, like dun 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 dun
Yeah,
dun,
exactly that.
And this characteristic for awkward time signatures and weird. It's guitar players' music, I think. Gent.
Yeah.
Not to shit on it. It's not for me, but it's really really big. I'm trying to think of some gent bands that isn't Meshuggah. Tesseract. What's that
Periphery.
one? Periphery. They got gent elements.
Periphery are a really good band to listen to. They got such a unique guitar sound as well that as soon as I hear that guitar, I know it's Periphery straight away.
Oh, shout out to a local act, Chaos Trigger. Have a lot of gent elements. Their album Outpost 31, very genty in many parts. Threw in some Merthyr boys. I don't know if there's anyone from Merthyr in Chaos Trigger anymore. Brad, maybe?
Don't know.
Was he have it there? No idea. But yeah, my final, I forgot to mention power metal and pirate metal, but fuck all that weak shit.
Celtic metal?
Celtic metal, Viking metal, like...
Have we missed some of the bands on my jackets as well?
Possibly. So yeah, Whitesnake, Death Leopard, we talk about Stratovarius, we didn't talk about Dream Theater, I didn't talk about bands like that, power metal, kind of, symphonic stuff.
Dream Theater's an influential
the
one.
one-
I'm not a fan of such, but
The guy on the left guy has got just nothing but fucking kiss patches. Little kiss patches. Yeah, Dream Theater are incredibly influential. I have listened to the early Jimi Hendrix albums for that reason. It's not for me. It's almost like Rush in some respects. I really like Rush, but I don't like Dream Theater.
I'm the same in that sense, I think.
So yeah, and that's how it ends. Really, everything is derivative.
Live, didn't we?
We did. They bored the fucking tears out of me.
They were on before Dimmu Borgir.
They were, yeah, even before, after, I can't remember, but and with them, Temptation as well were on at the same time. They were.
A band we didn't mention was Lamb of God as well. That's a
very popular band.
Yeah,
Lamb of God. Everything is derivative. Originality is impossible. Metal is dead. That's my ending note.
And then
it's not
died.
Obviously.
It did just have like just in case we missed any like notable ones. I know I saw Caliban in here as well. I know you like Caliban.
Oh,
Tom,
Caliban,
like,
I love Caliban. It's a name I don't know well.
Dillinger Escape Plan as well is in here.
Classics. And under what? What are Dillinger? What
Metalcore.
Dillinger? Metalcore. Not a chance. Not a chance.
It's
interesting.
I'm seeing a few bands actually in this list that I wouldn't necessarily say they're metalcore.
Like I would have said a lot of metal.
I saw a band called Chunk No Captain Chunk in here, and they're purely they're pop punk, like they're not metalcore.
Remember Bleeding Through?
Yeah, I remember Bleeding Through. Used to do that thing with the guitar, and they had that bird on the keyboard as well, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, they were definitely a metalcore band, weren't they? Or,
yeah, they were prime metalcore. I can't remember any of their songs though. I'm trying to fucking rap.
No, I wasn't a fan, I'll be honest. So I kind of.
So them live with Caliban. No, I was like a Barry band. I was in it. That fella Barry.
Yeah, Barry band.
Barry band.
But Barry
like this hardcore stuff.
Yeah. Barry from EastEnders.
So I think we're doing all right for time.
I'm
gonna do a quick quiz at the end. To cap it off and have a bit of fun because I like doing quizzes. I don't know.
Quiz because he's going university challenge on us.
Few and far between really these days, the quizzes and the Steegcast, so I like to get them in. So it's a quiz in two parts. The first part is called Metal Band or Medical Malady, or both. And for the purposes of being fair, I will say each question in the voice of both a doctor and a death metal vocalist, so you can get a good feel for both. Again, are we talking totes, brutes, death metal, or of that nature, or bizarre medical condition, or both?
I feel you.
You good to go, Rich?
I'm good to go, yeah.
Okay. First one then. I'm sorry, my dear, you seem to be stricken with a case of hypertrichosis. This next one is called hypertrichosis.
I'd say band.
I'd say band.
Band.
Wrong, it's a medical condition. I searched high and low, all my known sources.
Why isn't there a band called that?
What is it? What is it?
Excess hair growing on your skin.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't that that's got to be a band name?
So no points for anyone. Second question. I'm sorry, my dear, you seem to be stricken with a case of hyperemesis. This next one is called hyperemesis.
I'm going to go with band again.
Band.
I'm saying not band.
You're all wrong because it's both. So I guess you get half points or 1 point. We'll go 1 point. Keep it simple.
Yeah, because I
So
can't. I
do
can't
get
half in one note. One note.
So if you get if it's a both and you get both as the answer, you get 2 points. Okay. So yeah, hyperemesis, hypermesis. Not sure how you say it. It's extreme nausea and vomiting caused during pregnancy. It's also a fucking amazing gore grind band from Canada. I'm terribly sorry, my dear. You seem to be stricken with miasmic ooze.
That's a band.
That's a band.
This next song is called Miasmic Ooze.
That's a band.
You're all saying band?
Yeah.
1 point to everybody. It's a band. Fucking great band, by
That's
the
a
way.
great name. That's a really great name. Tremendous name.
It's the best name. Best name I've ever
heard some
heard.
names in my time, and that's a great name. And I know a lot of bands, and I know a lot of great names. And
You know a lot of what you would call gene bands, and that is up there. Miasmic Ooze. Fucking great.
Tremendous name.
I'm sorry, my dear. I don't know how to tell you this, but you have polystotic fibrous dysplasia.
That's
medical condition.
Medical condition.
Yeah.
This next song is called polystotic fibrous dysplasia.
What?
I say medical condition on that as well.
Yeah,
Could be
yeah,
both.
Is it?
Could be.
What are you saying, Gar? Both or medical condition?
I'm saying a medical condition.
Okay, so you're all right. It's a medical condition. I couldn't, for the life of me, find a band with this name.
That could
It
easily
is a
be both,
disorder.
though. I don't know. That's
could
again a missed
easily.
opportunity.
You could have easily just made bands with these names.
Yeah,
Could have.
yeah.
I could have just 10 minutes ago and I smashed it on YouTube. So pleostotic fibrous dysplasia is a disorder that features the replacement of multiple areas of bone instead with fibrous tissues, which causes fractures and deformities of the legs, arms, and skull. That's a fucking bad one. It should be a band name because it's fucking hanging. I couldn't find a band name. I might start a band called that. And
Yeah, and again, a missed opportunities. A lot of missed opportunities going on by here.
I'm terribly sorry, my dear. I don't know how to tell you this. You seem to have a case of diprosopus.
Sounds like a dinosaur.
It does, doesn't it? This next song is called Diprosopus.
That's it. Just Diprosopus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say medical term.
Both.
I'm saying both.
You're both wrong. Richard is right. It's a medical condition. I couldn't find a band called
Again, why isn't there a
Diprosopus.
band called that? What are people doing?
I'm surprised it's not a band. It sounds like a band, doesn't it? And I forgot to write down what that is as well, so I don't know what it is.
I'm gonna have to start a couple of grindcore bands, son.
Diplodocus bathroom party.
I'm terribly sorry to tell. I don't know how to tell you this, my dear. But you seem to be stricken with a case of the jigai.
Jigai.
This next song is called
Band?
Jigai, is that what it is?
I've said it in both voices. I'm not saying it again.
Band?
Both. I'm going to say both.
Band.
Did everyone answer? Did I miss someone?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go band.
Band.
So what were the answers again?
Both.
Richard was band.
Those two
Tom
are
was
band. I
both,
was
yeah.
both.
So everyone gets a point except Tom. Jigai is a Japanese obsessed Czech Republic go grind band. I think Jigai has something to do with blood and guts, like a sword thing in Japanese culture. Not a medical term. Jigai. Sorry, I probably fucked the pronunciation, so it's probably not helping. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry to tell you, my dear. You seem to have active stenosis. This next song is called Active Stenosis.
Both.
Active stenosis.
Both?
I'm gonna
Medical
say
condition.
medical term. I'm gonna say
What did you say, Tom? Was it medical?
Yeah.
Both. So 1 point to you two, 2 points to Gareth.
Ooh.
It's a narrowing of the spine, which cuts off the nerves in your spinal cord.
Oof.
It's also a fucking unstoppable gore grind band. I think from Russia, Ukraine, maybe, I'm not sure. I'm terribly sorry. I don't know how to tell you this, my dear, but you appear to have an anal cunt.
yes.
I'm not even going to do the second one.
Shall I just give us all a point?
If you
Yeah.
want to. Unless anyone wants to guess wrong for the sheer fuck of it. So the second part of the quiz is exactly the same game, but instead it covers the other parts of metal we've done, and this is Fantasy Fiend or From the Frostbitten Fjords.
Fantasy
Or both.
Fiend or From the Frostbitten Fjords.
Just mythical
Yes, so-
creatures or bands.
So is it a mythical
Okay,
creature,
okay.
or is it a band of like a black metal, power metal, fantasy kind of theme, or is it both? Because a lot
Okay.
of shit has been borrowed from those things. So I will say the names out loud in a wizened wizard voice, and also in a grim and frostbitten scowl, so you can get a fair, accurate feel for both. Again, are these band names or names of places from fantasy novels, etc., or both? Okay. So they call it Akikoki. The band are Akikoki.
That's a band.
That's a band.
Yeah, you've seen them.
They wear
So what are we
suits.
saying? Are we saying
don't they?
band or
Satanic
both?
band wear suits.
They do. You're absolutely spot on.
Might be both though. You never know. I'm gonna go band.
We all gone band on it.
Yeah, Christ, I know who they are.
So 1 point to everybody, but the correct answer is both.
No.
So 1 point to everybody. They're a British black and death metal band
Yeah, of
named
course
after
they
a
are.
satanic monkey from Robert Nye's sleazy fantasy novel, Faust. and the guy who sold his soul to the devil.
Okay.
They called it Sirithongol. And I wrote in my zine about Sirithongol. I love these impressions.
Fantasy, I'm going to go there.
Both.
I think Burroughs found a way to cover his spread, but haven't he?
Fireful spread.
Lovely spread. Lovely spread. I'm saying both.
I'm gonna go both as well.
You usually damn well told.
Fantasy.
Did everyone say both?
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tom said
fantasy.
Oh.
So 1 point to Tom, 2 points to everyone else. Sirithongol is a place in Lord of the Rings. It's also the name
I thought this
of-
sounded familiar. No.
It's also a metal band, yeah. They called it Gorgoroth. And then I drank acid with Gorgoroth.
Band.
I know it's a band, but could it be a fantasy thing too?
Oh, you don't do this, son.
I'm gonna say both.
Yeah, I'll go both.
Where you at, Gar?
I'll stick with band. I'll stick with band. Yeah, I'll stick with band.
Sounds like an underworld.
It is both. So 2 points to Tom and Rich, 1 point to Karen. It is also from Lord of the Rings. It's a place in Lord of the Rings, Gorgoroth.
Yeah, I know that. I knew that one.
They call it Birdsum. The twat who burnt the churches was Birdsum.
Oh,
Dead giveaway.
So
Gotta fuck myself on that one.
I don't know where the origins of that name would have come from, but I'm just gonna say just band. I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I'm gonna go the same on that.
Yep.
Everyone just banned. So 1 point to everybody, but 2 points for both was the correct answer. It's also from Lord of the Rings. Birdsum means darkness in Orcish.
Oh, actually,
Well.
I did not know that. No, did not know that at all.
It approaches the Dimmerborgir. I drank much whiskey, friend, with cult band Dimmerborgir.
When you say like a wizard, it could be both.
Could it be both? That's what
This
you
is
gotta
the
say.
point. This
Obviously,
is the
we know
point.
it's band. Could it be
The
both?
voices were an afterthought, and I think it works because it could go either way. It's terrible as well. The voices are.
I'm just going to lock in band. I'm sorry to say. I'm just going to lock in band there.
Band.
We know it's a band.
Yeah, I'm gonna go band. Play it safe.
Yeah, 3 points. Everyone, it's a band. It's not from any fantasy. It's Norwegian for Dark Castle.
Oh, okay. I never knew that. There we go.
Today we have learned something.
Yeah, Christ.
I'm running out of things a wizard would say. They told the tale of the Negura Bungant. I have a rare cassette demo of first release from Negura Bungant.
Both.
Both?
Band.
Both.
I don't know if I should have given still give 1 point for people to say both when it's not. The answer is band. So 1 point to everyone, I guess. No one's really losing in this. But someone's going to be ahead of others, though, so I guess it still kind of works.
No one wins in this game, son. You just do a little better each time, as Cleveland said.
No one wins.
No one finally
You
loses.
just do a little better each time.
It's Negura Bungant, I'm probably butchering it, is Romanian for Dark Forest. It's a black metal band. And then we enter the Carpathian Forest.
Oh.
I smoked crystal meth with members of Carpathian Forest.
Well, that's a good band name.
Just a quick question. Is Joe sitting behind you?
No, she's upstairs. She'll probably hear me, though.
Okay. Both.
Get back doing this one in a week's time, son. That's a good band name.
Yeah.
But it's
I just
also a
gotta go
place,
band.
isn't it? Could be
I just say band, son.
Did you all say band?
I said both.
So I'm
It's a
gonna
band. It's
go
not
fantasy for that one then, because I haven't.
Oh shit!
We're
Sorry.
mixing it up. We're all
Later
mixing it up
now.
now.
He didn't hear me. He didn't hear me. You're wrong.
I didn't hear you.
It's a band. It's a
band.
band. Carpathian Forest is named after a forest in the Carpathian Mountains, which is a real place. I think it's in like Transylvania.
Good God. You're back from the science.
So, sorry, Rich. I jumped.
That's
I
all right.
shot the answer out before you said. I didn't realize. But fucking great band. They got an album, Shining Black Leather, and through Titan Woods and Chasms, through Chasms and Titan Woods. Fucking great. Yeah, and so the last one then. They called him Mephistopheles. I sold my first pressing of the album Mephistopheles for €6,000. I'm running out of things to say, as I'm sure you can tell.
I feel like I know what Mephistopheles is.
Band.
Fantasy.
It's fantasy.
Everyone gets a point, but only one. It's both.
Ah!
So Mephistopheles is a demon of many folktales, specifically German folktales. So saith the internet. He's also in the Faust story that I mentioned at the start, the Ackercocker thing. It's also the name of apparently 96,000 different bands. The most famous of which would be the Stoner Doom band Mephistopheles, whose 2019 album Satan's Sex Ceremonies was released to quite a high amount of hype that it cannot live up to, but let's not go there. And that is my quiz. Right. What are the scores, Rich? What are the scores?
In third place on 14 points, we have Tom. In second place on 16 points, we have Barra. And in first place, just pipping it, is me with 17 points.
Well played.
Nice game. Good game. Good
May
game.
you all drown in miasmic ooze.
Good game. Well played. Good game.
GG, easy.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed
Nicely
that.
done. Nicely done.
And for anyone who isn't aware, I think the original concept of that game came from our Uned pilot episode, which will never see the light of day. So
metal band or magic card, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Going through all the metal bands and history of metal and
metal.
Yeah. It's cracking.
Apologies if it does get bogged down a bit, especially in the grindcore bit, which I wanted to keep short, like the genre, but ended up being ages.
Problem
and I'm sure there's loads of bands that we missed, or I missed. So feel free to start a flame war. Flame war is better than no comments.
Yeah.
Not wrong there.
Yeah, just to say as well on sort of the topic of music, as soon as we're coming to the end of this episode now. Barra recently did an interview with Darren Smith of Funeral for a Friend, which is now on our YouTube, which you can watch.
On YouTube.
It's a pretty good chat as well, literally about his entire career with Funeral for a Friend.
The very start of Funeral, right up to present day, and everything in between. A lovely chat with an old pal of mine, Mr. Darren Smith. Yes. And a lot of people have checked out already, actually, which is insane. It's thank you very much if you've watched it already by the time this video airs.
Yeah, definitely. And like we said before, we've got the Spotify playlist, which will or should be linked below in this video, and we'll also check it out on our social medias and whatnot. You can check that out if you want to listen to some metal.
And if there's anything we've missed off it as well, let us know if there's something we've missed off it.
Exactly. What would you put on it? What would be on that kind of like? If you had to put songs on a list of like say 50 to 100 songs that were like definitive to the development of metal, what would you include? It was really hard to make that list. Yeah.
Did you put any Kinks on there?
I didn't know.
Oh, there we go.
I was already stacked on the proto metal by getting in all the bands I mentioned that aren't really well known, like Lord Baltimore and fucking Blue Cheer and all that shit. So I was like, proper stacked at the front end with all those blues bands.
Fair.
But you could argue none of that shit matters, and the Kinks should be on there for the reasons we covered earlier. It's one of those things you can't ever get it right, really. I wouldn't want to write an encyclopedia on this. I really wouldn't. I am on the main stage in Donington, as you can see. They've been standing behind. I'm not facing the crowd. What do I think I am, like Incubus or something? Yeah. So thanks for listening.
Very
I hope you've enjoyed it.
There,
good joke.
I don't know where. I don't know where we're going to go next. I don't know what's coming in episode 3. Obviously, episode 4 is the standard weird internet. But what comes in episode 3, I don't know.
Don't tell them,
find out next month. So thanks for listening. I don't know if anyone else has got anything to say. I'll just wrap this. We good?
Yeah, we're all good.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for putting up with my shit, and have a good one, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you very much, as always. A pleasure.
Ta-da now.
Ta-da now.
So for the jackpot, is it the top, the middle, or the bottom?